Chapter 2138. The violent explosions continued to reverberate in the void. The powerful shockwaves caused the sky to collapse, blocking everyone's path. Even the experts who wanted to chase after Yi Shiwen had no choice but to wait for the explosions to subside before they could chase after him. However, Yi Shiwen's figure had already flown further and further away. He knew very well what would happen to him if he stayed behind after hoarding so much wealth. Therefore, he didn't dare to stop at all. He gritted his teeth and forcibly suppressed the injuries in his body. Although his resistance to divine power had become stronger after going through the baptism of divine power, the battle he had experienced when he had released his divine power was far from comparable to this one. It could even be said that this was a completely different concept of battle. Dai Jibai and the Thunderbolt Behemoth were far from being comparable to the Divine Union Leader and the Desolate Heaven Underworld Hall Master. He had to endure this. As long as he did so, the surprise that this risky operation would bring would be enough to improve his cultivation further and reach a higher level. He only felt that the sky was spinning and the earth was spinning. There wasn't a place in his body that wasn't in severe pain. He would have fainted if the enlightening mind ancient tree hadn't been suppressing his mind. This was the self-protection instinct of any living creature. The mythological experts behind him were dumbfounded as they watched this scene. They hadn't expected that things would turn out like this. They had never imagined that Yi Shiwen would actually dare to detonate a pseudo-Dao artifact. In the mysterious world, a pseudo-Dao artifact was almost as valuable as a mythological expert. Some low-level mythological experts didn't even have a pseudo-Dao artifact. Using these pseudo-Dao artifacts would allow them to recruit many mythological experts. When that happened, they would be able to call the wind and summon the rain. It was also because of this that they understood how important and valuable pseudo-Dao artifacts were. They wouldn't have thrown out a pseudo-Dao tool without any hesitation if they were in Yi Shiwen's shoes. It seemed that Yi Shiwen would have thrown out all his pseudo-Dao tools if the situation had gone awry. He wouldn't have hesitated to blow them up. They couldn't help but feel a chill down their spines. Although they didn't detonate the pseudo-Dao artifacts for self-preservation, anyone who dared to do it so decisively was definitely not an ordinary person. They couldn't help but feel a little regretful. At this moment, they finally regained some of their rationality as they watched the wealth leave them. They were extremely regretful that they had offended Yi Shiwen. Such a person was definitely not someone who would stay in a small pond. In the future, he might really turn into a dragon if he encountered a storm. When that time came, wouldn't their days be miserable if he remembered this enmity? Judging from Yi Shiwen's previous situations, he was definitely a vile person who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. He wasn't a magnanimous person. Ah, Yi Shiwen! Compared to them, the Heaven Wasteland Temple Master roared angrily. He looked battered and exhausted. He had already been seriously injured by Yi Shiwen before. Later on, he had rushed to the front like a madman and was directly detonated by the pseudo-Dao artifact that Yi Shiwen had thrown out. Although he didn't die from the explosion, it made him look even more battered. The Divine Union Leader and the Cloud City Lord were in the same situation as him. The three of them had the most profound martial arts among them, so they were naturally the fastest. Although they weren't as injured as the Heaven Wasteland Temple Master, they still weren't having a good time. Killing intent flickered in the Divine Union Leader's eyes. Allowing Yi Shiwen to escape this time was simply a humiliation that he would never be able to wash away. Even if he killed Yi Shiwen in the end, it would still be difficult to wash away this humiliation. A mere 5th-level Pawang Realm expert had forced him and the Heaven Wasteland Temple Master into such a sorry state. He had no choice but to cut off all means of retreat and escape with all his wealth in the end. If this matter were to spread, it would simply be a devastating blow to his reputation. He had established the title of the #1 expert in the mysterious world and brought the divine union to its current level by constantly defeating all the strong enemies. All the enemies who wanted to challenge him, without exception, had either died or surrendered. Only Yi Shiwen was an exception. Not only did he not die, but he was also living a carefree life. This time, he had even made a fool out of him. It was a great humiliation. Kill, I must kill him. The Cloud City Lord didn't look too good either. Although he and Yi Shiwen didn't have a huge enmity, it was obvious that Yi Shiwen had made a fool out of him. Most importantly, he didn't get anything, so it wouldn't be good for his reputation if word got out. Fortunately, there were 2 more unlucky people today. From today onwards, the Heaven Wasteland Temple Master and the Divine Union had lost all their reputation. How would they have the face to establish themselves in the mysterious world in the future? Perhaps there would be endless disputes with Yi Shiwen. Thinking of this, he felt much better. As long as he wasn't the most miserable one, it was fine as long as there were others who were even more miserable than him. Although many myth experts were unwilling, there was no other way. The aftermath of the explosion of a pseudo-Dao tool was too great. Even if they forcibly rushed over now, Yi Shiwen would already be gone. They didn't know what kind of movement technique that was, but it could actually reach such a level of speed. Even myth experts like them were shocked by it. If his cultivation base caught up to them, they might not even be able to catch the corner of his clothes. But at this time, they were already calm. In any case, he was already such a monster, and there was nothing strange about him being a little more monstrous. After getting rid of the threat of the crowd, Yi Shiwen hurriedly left the group of divine tombs. He didn't even dare to return to the mysterious world or the true martial domain. Instead, he went directly into the depths of the starry sky, found a huge group of meteorites, and hid in it. He waited for a long time. He obviously knew that no one could chase after him, but he still couldn't feel at ease. After a long time, he finally heaved a sigh of relief. The moment he heaved a sigh of relief, a mouthful of blood directly spurted out of his mouth. His physical body had already begun to crack, and blood directly gushed out. Along the way, he had forcibly used his qi to maintain his physical body. Otherwise, he might have exploded into pieces on the spot. He hurriedly used the phoenix regeneration technique, and a shadow of a phoenix formed behind him, enveloped him in it, and forcibly stabilized his physical body. Then, it slowly healed his physical body. Boundless pain came from Yi Shiwen's physical body, as if he was in the 18th level of hell, enjoying all kinds of torture, but his eyes were clear and bright. The corner of his mouth revealed a somewhat strange smile under the situation of enduring the severe pain. That was the severe pain that forced the corner of his mouth to twitch. This time, it could be said that he had entered the tiger's den, and after a great battle, his physical body was almost destroyed, but naturally there were many benefits. His fleshly body had experienced so much divine power, yet it did not explode. This in itself was a huge transformation, causing his fleshly body to become even more tyrannical. All the meridians in his body had been connected, and his fleshly body had almost been smashed apart and reformed. This almost swept away all the obstacles in his way to the 6th level of Paong realm. He had just broken into the 5th level of Paong realm, and it was impossible for him to advance further so quickly, but with the help of the divine power washing, he directly swept away all the obstacles in his way to the 6th level of Paong realm. And this was just the beginning of laying the foundation. More importantly, he had obtained the divine source, which was the hard currency used by the gods. Compared to the Xian core, it was many times more valuable. Although there were only 36 pieces, but for the current him, it was already an astronomical amount of wealth. Ordinary people could not even exchange Xian cores for divine source. With these source of God, he would have the foundation to refine the remnant consciousness of this deity. As long as he could refine the remnant consciousness of this deity, He would be able to advance by leaps and bounds and step into the sixth heaven of Pawang in an instant. Refining the remnant of this god and obtaining the martial arts of the god level would have immeasurable benefits for his martial arts realm. Compared with these benefits, those pseudo-Dao tools were just supplementary. On the contrary, it was not as important as these things that could directly increase Yi Shiwen's strength and realm perception. But these were all things in the future. At present, the most important thing for him was to treat the almost fatal injury. He used the 5 elements Qian Yuan diagram to arrange the 5 elements great array, and guarded this area. Then, he entered into the closed-door training state with a peace of mind. That huge phoenix behind him was constantly crying, and transforming its power into phoenix power. It was constantly nourishing Yi Shiwen's body, and slowly healing his injuries. If it was an ordinary injury, it could almost be healed in almost a second. But this injury was caused by the divine power, and it itself had immortal elements. Although it also gave him great benefits, at the same time, it also caused great damage to his physical body. Without the Phoenix regeneration technique, it could not be healed at all. During this period of time when he was healing, the outside world was already in an uproar because of this matter. The first tomb of the god was opened, and the inside was really like the original rumor. There was the god source, which only belonged to the gods. There were also many pseudo-Dao tools, and the most important god's shell. Everything was the same as what everyone had guessed at the beginning. However, no one had expected that Yi Shiwen would monopolize all the benefits instead of everyone rushing forward and grabbing a portion of the loot. No one had expected that Yi Shiwen would monopolize all the benefit. Whether it was the pseudo-Dao tools, the god source, or the god's shell, all of them were actually occupied by Yi Shiwen. Everyone was in an uproar, and they did not know that the benefits he obtained were far more than that. But just this alone was enough to shock the Xian world. Chapter 2139. The benefits of the opening of the god's tomb this time, even if it was just the simplest pseudo-Dao artifact, was enough to excite ordinary myth experts. Many myth experts didn't even have a pseudo-Dao artifact in their hand. As for those who had a pseudo-Dao artifact, no one would complain about having too many. For something like a pseudo-Dao artifact, the more the better. Even if it wasn't suitable for him, he could still bestow it to his disciple or gift it to his friends and family. For such a priceless dermic artifact, it was worth it to be given to him. Not to mention the source of God, which contained the great way of the gods. Usually, the appearance of one piece was enough to make myth experts fight over it, let alone 36 pieces appearing at the same time. In addition, the divine shell had been taken away by Yi Shiwen in the end. If it was not for the fact that no one could find Yi Shiwen's whereabouts, a large number of people would have come knocking on his door. Whether it was the true martial domain, the ancient desolate domain, or the human race of the mysterious world, there were already a large number of people lying in ambush at all the places where everyone thought Yi Shiwen might appear. They were just waiting for Yi Shiwen to appear and take action. Who knew that Yi Shiwen would not appear at all, as if he had vanished from the face of the earth? Although some people had seen Yi Shiwen's ferocity, only a small number of them had rushed to the scene. Most people did not arrive at all. They were still doubtful that Yi Shiwen had defeated a bronze titan, let alone the joint attack of the Heaven Wasteland Temple Master and the leader of the Divine Union. What a joke! Not to mention the leader of the Divine Union, who was the #1 expert in the Pawang realm, even the Heaven Wasteland Temple Master, in the entire mysterious world and the surrounding worlds, including those hidden old monsters, could only be counted on one hand. Not to mention that both of them had been defeated by Yi Shiwen, which was simply a myth. Whether it was the Heaven Wasteland Temple or the Divine Union, they did not come out to give any explanation, perhaps because they did not want to talk about this sad matter, or because they simply wanted more people to die. In many people's opinion, this was a normal response. The Heaven Wasteland Temple Master and the Divine Union were experts at such a high level. People were always saying that they had been defeated by someone. If they had to come out and respond, wouldn't they be extremely busy? Therefore, except for those who had witnessed it with their own eyes and those who had received accurate information, most people simply didn't believe it, especially those legendary experts. They all wanted to get their hands on Yi Shiwen's wealth. Even if they could get 1% of his wealth, it would be enough to make them die of happiness, let alone so much. However, no matter what their intentions were, they had to first find Yi Shiwen. However, ever since he had escaped, Yi Shiwen had disappeared in an instant, just like a clay ox entering the sea. Many myth experts had turned that part of the universe upside down, but they simply could not find any traces of him. Therefore, there was even a rumor that Yi Shiwen was probably completely dead. At that time, many people had seen cracks appearing on his physical body when he escaped. How serious must his injuries be to cause cracks to appear on his unbelievably tyrannical physical body? Although divine power was good, it was impossible for there to be no sequelae, and this was precisely one of the symptoms of the sequelae. There were also some people who felt that he should be hiding and looking for a place to recuperate. Perhaps it would be decades or even centuries before he would come out of recuperation. However, no matter what the rumor was, no matter how intense the discussion outside was, Yi Shiwen, who was at the heart of the struggle, was simply nowhere to be seen. Apart from him, the Divine Union and the Heaven Wasteland Palace were undoubtedly affected the most. Not many people believed that Yi Shiwen could defeat the Divine Union leader and the Heaven Wasteland Palace master by himself. In most people's opinion, there was no need for him to run away if he had the ability to do so. It was enough to kill everyone. However, it was also a fact that the two of them had joined hands to kill Yi Shiwen in the end. This was also a fact. It could be said that they didn't personally attack Yi Shiwen before, so it was still excusable for Yi Shiwen to escape. But now, even if they personally attacked Yi Shiwen, it was useless in the face of Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen actually escaped. In the eyes of many people, this was a stain, and a huge stain. In the eye of the storm, the Divine Union and the Heaven Wasteland Palace were also at a loss for words because the two of them were indeed unable to take down Yi Shiwen together. In fact, they were very clear that it was far from what the outside world had guessed. On the contrary, their leaders were suppressed by Yi Shiwen even when they joined forces. However, in private, undercurrents were surging. Although those behemoths seemed to be doing nothing on the surface, in fact, it was far from the case. In private, countless manpower and material resources were spread out to search for Yi Shiwen's whereabouts. It was such a large amount of wealth. Whether it was the pseudo-Dao tool, the divine source, or the most important divine shell, they couldn't watch helplessly as they fell into Yi Shiwen's hands. They didn't want to let go of this wealth even if they didn't have any enmity with Yi Shiwen. No matter how many plans and schemes they had, the prerequisite was to find Yi Shiwen first. Just when the outside world had become a pot of porridge because of their own affairs, Yi Shiwen finally managed to barely heal his injuries after 10 days. Even with the tyrannical phoenix regeneration technique, it actually took a full 10 days. One could imagine how serious the injuries this time were. Although it was not the most dangerous time he had encountered in his life, it was actually almost the same. After healing his injuries, the aura on his body had already begun to boil, almost spontaneously beginning to break through to the 6th level of Paoang realm. During this period of time, his speed of breaking through was too fast, and on the contrary, his martial arts realm was somewhat unable to keep up. Although he already had the foundation to break through to the 6th level of Paoang realm, he still did not act rashly. Instead, he began to refine this god's remnant consciousness. Under the suppression of the Mingxin ancient tree, this god's remnant consciousness was nailed to the depths of his mind by the branches. He constantly roared, "Damn human, despicable human, you will die a horrible death, a horrible death." He was already extremely resentful. It seemed that this was all he could say, and the rest of his consciousness had disappeared. I don't know whether I'll die a horrible death or not, but I'm sure that you'll die a horrible death. You signed a contract with me just to take advantage of me, humph? Yi Shiwen sent out a wisp of divine sense into his mind. Impossible, impossible! At this time, this god's remnant consciousness finally had a little spirit. He looked at Yi Shiwen's eyes, still with a look of disbelief. My divine covenant is flawless. As long as you sign the contract, it is impossible to escape. Even if you are also a god, it is impossible to escape. Tell me the reason. He suddenly went berserk. He thought about it, and the only reason for his failure was that his divine covenant did not play its due role. He always thought that his divine covenant was effective, and should have bound Yi Shiwen. Otherwise, how would he dare to seize Yi Shiwen's body so carelessly? The matter of seizing someone's body could be said to be intolerable by heaven and earth, and naturally, the risk was extremely high. Let alone seizing a demigod, even if he wanted to seize an ordinary person's body, it was very likely that he would fail miserably. Such things happened repeatedly in history, so unless it was a last resort, when seizing someone's body, he must make sure that nothing went wrong. This god's remnant consciousness thought that Yi Shiwen had already become his effort, and it should have been said to be foolproof. In the end, the reality was far from as simple as he thought. He actually failed, and completely lost control of Yi Shiwen. No wonder Yi Shiwen was not so obedient before. It was just that he firmly believed that there was no problem with his divine covenant, and also saw that Yi Shiwen signed a contract of 7 months, so there was absolutely no problem, so he did not take it to heart. Who would have thought that something would actually happen? Want to know the reason? In your next life. Yi Shiwen sneered. He did not have the slightest sympathy for this god's remnant consciousness. If it was not for Yi Mo at that time, perhaps he would have suffered a disaster at that time, and would have suffered a big setback in his hand. As the saying goes, everything is decided by the heavens, and everything was already predestined. If it was not for him wanting to seize Yi Shiwen's body, he would not have fallen into the current situation. Yi Shiwen shouted loudly, and suddenly grabbed out his big hand, and grabbed the god's remnant consciousness. His big hand emitted a flame, as if he was roasting something. Ah! This god's remnant consciousness kept screaming. His spirit was refined by Yi Shiwen, and his martial arts experience and consciousness were constantly extracted by Yi Shiwen, turning into talismans, and directly disappearing into the depths of Yi Shiwen's mind. Although because it was only a remnant consciousness, and so the martial arts experience and perception left behind were also incomplete, but for the current Yi Shiwen it was enough. As these martial arts experience and perception were constantly extracted by him, Yi Shiwen only felt that his realm was also rising at an astonishing speed. Many things that he did not understand before, and obscure things suddenly became clear. He could feel that the power in his body, under the condition that no one was directing it, began to move on its own and rush to the 6th level of Paong realm. After an unknown period of time, he continued to comprehend these martial arts insights that were extracted, while constantly rushing to the 6th level of Paong realm. Suddenly, he woke up from the state of continuous enlightenment. It turned out that the last bit of primordial spirit had been refined by him, and his cultivation had unknowingly stepped into the 6th heaven of the Paong realm. Chapter 2140. Everything happened naturally. He had already accumulated enough, not to mention that most of his other preparations were already in place. This was just like pushing the boat along with the current, so it was easy to achieve. It could be said that this was the easiest time he had ever been in cultivation. After successfully entering the 6th level of the Paong realm, his combat power was even comparable to that of an expert at the 8th level of the Paong realm. His various techniques could be said to have made a huge leap in progress. If he were to encounter the Bronze Titan again, he wouldn't even need to use any techniques to deal with him. This was a leap in strength. After entering the 6th level of the Paong realm, Yi Shiwen didn't continue his closed-door training. Unless he had other fortuitous encounters, he wouldn't be able to achieve a leap in strength in a short period of time. Speaking of which, his accumulation was too little, and the time was too short. If he had 1 or 2,000 years of accumulation and foundation, he could directly make consecutive breakthroughs in one go. This was the biggest difference between him and young Master Gui Yun, Jun Dingtian, and the others. During the 1 month that he had been in closed-door training, the entire Xian world was still in turmoil because of him. Until now, it had not completely calmed down. Whether it was the many pseudo-Dao weapons, the 36th celestial source, or the divine shell, they could all be said to be shocking things. No one could completely resist such a temptation. In particular, those mythical experts who thought that they were powerful enough had basically rushed into the divine tombs, looking for Yi Shiwen's whereabouts everywhere. This wasn't like before, where it was basically just a rumor. They had finally seen the real thing. Everyone seemed to have gone crazy. Some people even thought of slaughtering the human race everywhere to force Yi Shiwen out and make him the target of everyone. Fortunately, they were stopped by rational people. Otherwise, if this continued and Yi Shiwen was really driven crazy, they would definitely not have an easy time. Moreover, there was still the existence of the extremely terrifying guy who had crushed the Divine Union leader's spirit avatar with one slap. Wouldn't it be courting death to provoke such an opponent? However, while many people were still looking for Yi Shiwen, some overlord forces had already united to prepare to open the next tomb. They hadn't obtained anything from the previous tomb. It could be considered bad luck that Yi Shiwen had obtained everything. However, instead of searching for Yi Shiwen, it was better to open the next tomb. This time, their experience told them that this was the right path. It was just a matter of time. After a period of time, they would open another divine tomb, and all problems would be easily solved. Of course, they didn't give up looking for Yi Shiwen, but they just didn't look for him with great fanfare. After understanding the situation outside, Yi Shiwen smiled. Even if he really encountered those mythological experts who came looking for trouble, he wouldn't care at all unless they were top-notch figures like the Divine Union's leader. They wouldn't be a match for him at all. His combat strength was even comparable to an expert at the 8th level of the Paong realm. With such strength, he could basically walk unhindered in the mysterious world. This was also why he was a lot less apprehensive. However, this wasn't what he was most concerned about. What he was most concerned about was that there hadn't been any news from Yimo. At least, there hadn't been any news from the outside. He quietly returned to the human race in the mysterious world and quietly met with Bai Jianxing. However, he was told that there hadn't been any news from Yimo ever since he had left. During this period, the rapid expansion of the human race was still progressing rapidly. Although the human race's foundation was still relatively weak, it was still much deeper than the Divine Union's. The Divine Union could rely on the power of the Divine Union's leader to climb all the way to the throne of the Overlord. Although the human race didn't have such conditions, in everyone's opinion, Yimo should be a peerless expert standing on the side of the human race. With such a peerless expert overseeing the human race, who would dare to look down on the human race? Moreover, Yi Shiwen wasn't someone to be trifled with. Previously, he had single-handedly stopped the Divine Union's leader and the Heaven Wasteland Temple Master. Regardless of how many people believed in him, it was enough to make him famous. In many people's hearts, he had actually grown to such a level that he could be compared to the Heaven Wasteland Temple Master and the Divine Union's leader. With the deterrence of these two people, coupled with the help of Bai Jianxing and Yi Shiwen's young Kuan Peng and Star Beast, the human race's expansion had been defeated during this period of time. Although many other forces were unhappy, they could only maintain restraint and retreat for the sake of the extremely terrifying Yimo and the rapidly growing Yi Shiwen. They didn't dare to compete with the human race, who was currently at the peak of their power. However, from Yi Shiwen's words, Bai Jianxing could feel that something might have happened to Yi Mo otherwise. He wouldn't have left for so long without any news from him. His heart couldn't help but tighten. Now, the human race could only have such power because of two people. One was Yi Mo and the other was Yi Shiwen. If anything happened to either of them, it might be like the collapse of Optimus Prime. However, Yi Shiwen didn't say much. He just said that he was fine and then left. Yi Shiwen didn't go anywhere else, but directly rushed to the Xian world, where the human race imperial court was located. Looking from afar, it used to be where the human race imperial court was. Now, it had been rendered into a huge devil's den. Countless devil chi was emitting from it. Looking from afar, it was almost like a small devil world. Many devils came in and out of it. There was even a passage to the devil world suppressed inside. Smoke rose everywhere. Many places were still in ruins. It was definitely not left behind when it was breached more than 100 years ago. It was clearly left behind recently. The human race imperial court was where the 4 kings used to live. There were many seals left by the kings. If there were no traitors, it would be impossible to be breached by the Abyss Devil Lord. Now that the human race imperial court had fallen into the hands of the devil race, many of the seals could no longer work. Many of them had simply fallen into a deep sleep. Although it was not as tyrannical as when it was still in the hands of the human race, it was impossible for ordinary myths to break in, because he had seen the strength of the defense of the imperial court with his own eyes. In the Xian world, only Yi Mo had the ability to fight like this. Almost in an instant, he was sure that this person was definitely Yi Mo. Yi Mo must have been here before, but in the end, he didn't go back. Thinking of this, his heart became anxious. After living together for hundreds of years, to him, Yi Mo had long been like a brother. He took a big stride and rushed into the royal court. As soon as he stepped into the royal court, he immediately attracted the attention of many Devil Clan experts in the royal court. Who dares to break into the imperial court? Human race expert. Hee, I like this kind of aura. Many devil experts roared in succession and rushed towards Yi Shiwen to attack him. You all overestimate yourself. These martial arts torrents hidden in the void could not attack Yi Shiwen's body at all. All of them were absorbed by the 5 elements. Great array formed around his body. Catch him for me! Yi Shiwen shouted and directly tore the space. A great demon that was originally hidden in the depths of the void was directly caught by Yi Shiwen. He had no power to fight back at all. No one knew when this master of Paong realm had surrendered to the Abyss Devil Lord. He originally did not put Yi Shiwen in his eyes, but in the end, he was caught by Yi Shiwen. All the devil race was suddenly dumbfounded. Who was this human? How could he be so fierce? In the layers of defense of the imperial court, he was actually caught by someone. If it was outside, it would be terrible. Who the hell are you? That great demon continued to roar. From his body constantly bloomed golden divinity, trying to escape from Yi Shiwen's control. However, Yi Shiwen's big hand was like the strongest iron hoop, firmly grasping his neck. All his struggles were useless. It was as if his shoulder blades had been locked tightly, suppressing all resistance. He was almost scared to death. He never thought that one day he would be killed in the imperial court. Moreover, he did not know that there was such a tyrannical existence in the human race. During this period of time, because the Abyss Devil Lord was not around, they stopped attacking. Although the ancient human race was heavily injured, it was not that they did not have the ability to fight back. After all, so many tyrannical masters' inheritance had been left behind. Even if there were only 1 or 2, it would be a huge threat to the Legend Masters. Without the Abyss Devil Lord, they also did not dare to directly attack. Although there were no big battles, there were many small battles. From time to time, they would rush into the hinterland of the human race to kill and then leave. In these decades, he could be considered to have seen all kinds of methods of the human race. Among them, There was definitely no such terrifying master. He opened his eyes wide as if he wanted to remember Yi Shiwen's appearance. "Where is your demon lord?" Yi Shiwen asked. Everyone was shocked. This person actually came to find trouble with their great demon lord. What was wrong with this world? Why did it feel so much crazier than before? Their great demon lord was only a little bit away from entering the legendary realm of Dao confirmation. Even in the demon world, that was a huge legend. But before this, more than a month ago, someone came to find trouble with their demon lord. That battle directly caused the sky to fall and the earth to crack. Even the human imperial court, which was known to be an impregnable fortress, was beaten into ruins. Even the legend masters like them had to hide far away, not daring to get close. How long had it been? And there was actually another person coming to find trouble. What was wrong with this world? Chapter 2141. The Abyssal Demon Lord, who was originally as powerful as a god in their hearts, was actually being targeted by people one after another at this time. Could it be that the illustrious reputation he had established over the years was no longer able to deter his enemies? "Human, I won't tell you. Don't even think about it," he roared as if he had exhausted all the strength in his body. But he didn't have the chance to shout the next sentence because Yi Shiwen directly broke his neck, and then directly extracted his divine soul to check his memory. Sure enough, in the depths of his memory, he found the memory of a period of time. Boom! In his memory, the space in the imperial court suddenly shook, and then an incomparably loud sound came. "Abyss Demon Lord, come out!" He hurried out, only to see a gigantic demonic shadow slowly appear in the void. Under that demonic shadow was a tall and muscular man. His face was resolute and his eyes were wide open in anger. His entire body was overflowing with ferocious might. Just by standing there quietly, he gave off an aura of supremacy in the entire world. His heart suddenly tightened. Such strength was not something he could provoke at all. He was also a legendary master, and in terms of strength, he was not afraid of anyone. But at this time, his subconscious told him that it was better to obediently hide far away, or else he might be killed. "Who is it? Damn it, come down for me!" In the imperial court, many newly arranged formations were activated one after another. An incomparably powerful torrent of energy suddenly rushed over, blotting out the sky and covering the earth. From afar, it looked like a huge rain of fire. Even a legendary master like him would also die if he was hit by too many torrents of energy. But who knew that the next horrifying scene finally appeared? In his eyes, the man actually just grabbed the void with his big hand, and all the torrents of energy were all caught by him. These attacks couldn't cause him any trouble at all. He swore that he had never seen such a terrifying expert in his life. Even the Abyssal Demon Lord wasn't that frightening in his heart, because the Abyssal Demon Lord seemed to have gone into seclusion a long time ago, and didn't have the chance to display his shocking power in front of him. And just at this time, the Abyssal Demon Lord finally came out, facing that terrifying man from afar. The angry curses of many demons flashed around him. Many people knew that the Abyssal Demon Lord was in closed-door training. In the hearts of these demons, as long as the Abyssal Demon Lord came out of closed-door training, he would definitely be a Dao-confirming expert. Now, he was only a little bit away from completing his closed-door training, but he was forced to come out. It could be imagined that he would definitely lose a lot of opportunities. In their hearts, the Abyssal Demon Master wasn't a deity, but he was no different from a deity. Because if he managed to prove his way, it was very possible that he would lead them back to the glory of the demon race. The myriad worlds would be conquered by them, and they would all tremble and groan under the iron hooves of the demon race. Although the Abyssal Demon Lord couldn't obtain the support of the orthodox forces in the demon world, he attracted many tyrannical and ambitious demon experts who wanted to restore the glory of the demon race. Ever since the Abyssal Demon Lord had conquered the human race's royal court, it had only been a short period of time, but many Myth Realm experts had come to join him, including him. It could be imagined just how high the position of the Abyssal Demon Master was in the hearts of these people. "Shut up, you guys who don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. You guys dare to say that you can conquer the myriad worlds? Even the Demon King doesn't dare to say that. You guys are really too daring. Let alone the fact that he isn't a Tao-confirming expert. Even if he really did, so what? Do you really think that you can conquer the myriad worlds by relying on him?" Emo sneered. He simply didn't put the threat that had existed for countless years in his eyes. He had an imposing manner that even if there were millions of people in front of him, he was still shocked by Emo's imposing manner. "You are also a demon, why don't you come and join me? If we join hands, what kind of enemy can't we defeat?" The Abyssal Demon Master didn't get angry immediately. On the contrary, something that made people's eyes pop out happened. He actually took the initiative to extend an olive branch. One must know that with the personality of the Abyssal Demon Master, he wouldn't allow anyone to go against his will, no one. "Join you? You think you're worthy? When I was all-powerful and invincible, who knows where you were?" Emo sneered, as if he had heard the most interesting thing in the world. "You want to recruit me with just a little kid of the younger generation?" The Abyssal Demon Master looked at Emo in surprise. He didn't know where this Emo came from. One must know that he had survived from the era of the Rise of Kings. At that time, those who had once shaken the world and stirred up the winds and clouds of the world had already died. After all, it was unknown how many tens of thousands of years had passed. Only he relied on his profound cultivation and special opportunities to survive until today. Who exactly was this person in front of him? He actually said that his seniority was even higher than his. As for lying, the Abyssal Demon Master didn't even think about it. Such a tyrannical expert wouldn't do such a thing at this point. He believed that Emo still had the self-awareness of an expert. "I don't care who you are or where did you come from. But today, if you obediently retreat, I will treat it as if nothing has happened. In the future, you can walk your sunny path and I'll walk my lonely wooden bridge. Otherwise," the Abyssal Demon Master threatened. His eyes flashed with vigilance. He was very clear that this man in front of him was too terrifying. He actually brought a strong pressure to him. One must know that his current cultivation could be said to be at the pinnacle of Paong realm. He only needed a little bit more to prove his Tao, transcending beyond the world and becoming immortal. However, when facing this man, he actually didn't have the confidence in his heart. That's why he spoke politely. Otherwise, he would have already strangled this man to death. If not, then what? Emo sneered, completely disregarding his threat. "Otherwise, I will send you on your way today." While speaking, the Abyssal Demon Master actually made his move in an instant. There was no sign before, but he still made his move just like that. After sensing Emo's threat, the Abyssal Demon Master decisively chose to make the first move and eliminate this danger first. Soul Crusher Devil Claw. The Abyssal Demon Master directly grabbed out with his claw. The void was shattered by his grasp. In an instant, a powerful force rushed towards the depths of Emo's divine soul. This was his famous unique skill. In the past, he was also famous in the world. However, he had been suppressed for countless years and didn't have the opportunity to use it. After he came out, those peerless experts who used to compete with him had already turned into a cup of soil. No one was worthy enough for him to use this move. Therefore, after this move was used, even the experts of the devil race were dumbfounded. They didn't know what this move was. Beast Tao. Emo roared and blasted his fist forward. His fist instantly turned into a huge roaring white tiger. This tiger was born with the innate ability to control wind attribute energy. It directly bit on the Soul Crusher Devil Claw and crushed it with its teeth. Yemo's devil claw looked like a tiger. Yemo's devil claw looked like a tiger. They couldn't reach Yemo at all. They were all devoured by the animal path that Yemo spun out. And this was just the beginning. The 6 paths reincarnation wheel behind Yemo continued to spin, and legendary ferocious beasts gushed out from it one after another. There were dragons, cheilants, phoenixes, and so on. It could be said that all the ferocious beasts that were famous in the ancient times were gathered in it. These ferocious beasts turned into a powerful martial arts torrent that directly rushed towards the abyssal demon lord. 6 paths of reincarnation fist. Even the inheritance of the Azura race is not complete. How can you have it? The abyssal demon master tore open the space one after another. He shattered the power in the space. At this time, he somewhat believed that this guy might really be an old guy who had lived for countless years. He could be reborn through various methods. Could it be that others could not? But why did he look like a senior of the devil race? Most importantly, this person in front of him was clearly not from the Azura race. It was too easy to distinguish the Azura race because the men of the Azura race were too ugly. It was not difficult to distinguish them. Even if he used a transformation cultivation method, it would be useless. Humph, this is nothing. I have seen more peerless martial arts than you have eaten. Yemo didn't care at all. He directly blasted out another punch. 6 paths of reincarnation fists human Dao fist. He clenched his 5 fingers into a fist and blasted out an incomparably huge world, crashing down towards the abyssal demon lord. Countless humans lived in this incomparably huge world, and all sorts of lives had evolved. The life experiences of these people turned into surging mortal dust, covering everything and crushing all enemies who dared to stand in their way. My will is the will of heaven. This was the true power of the 6 paths of reincarnation fist. Compared to the highest profound meaning of the human Dao fist that Yemo displayed, although Yi Shiwen's human Dao fist had also improved very quickly, it was like a child's play in comparison. There was no comparison at all. Yi Shiwen watched silently. He had seen Yemo practicing human Dao fist once before. But at that time, he did not practice the 6 paths of reincarnation fist. Therefore, he did not have any comprehension. But now it was different. He could feel that through the comprehension, his human Dao fist had advanced a step further. He could directly blast out a kingdom. This was a kind of quantitative change that caused a qualitative change. He had laid a solid foundation for his previous practice. And at this time, in Yi Shiwen's memory, the battle between the two sides was even more intense. Chapter 2142. Both of them were among the most powerful experts under Dao confirmation. They had reached the limit of this level. The battle between the two destroyed everything. The powerful shockwave directly flipped over. God knows how many formations of the royal court were destroyed in one breath. The ancient formations in the royal court were originally set up by successive kings during the era of kings. They were extremely powerful. However, those formations could not be operated by the demons, so they were all dismantled and rebuilt with the demons' formations. Their power was far less than before. Many demons hidden in the space were directly annihilated on the spot. The shockwave even directly impacted this demon expert. He spat out a mouthful of blood on the spot. In his memory, everything turned dark. When he looked over again, the two had already fought into the endless starry sky. Coincidentally, the two of them did not choose to use this place as their battlefield. All of this seemed to take a long time, but in fact, it was only a moment. Yi Shiwen had already completely checked this expert's memory. However, this bit of memory was not the slightest bit of use because he still could not find out where Yemo had gone. Rumble! A series of attacks, almost in an instant, blasted over again. The ancient formations were all resurrected and began to be activated. They directly blasted in Yi Shiwen's direction. Whoosh! Yi Shiwen directly tore the space and instantly left this place. Since he could not find Yi Mo's whereabouts, there was no point in staying here. However, the only thing he could rejoice about was that Yi Mo did not seem to have fallen into the hands of the Abyss Demon Master. It should be said that from his memory, he learned that the two seemed to have disappeared at the same time. They disappeared together. He glanced at the disappearing royal court from afar and thought to himself, "Sooner or later, I will fight my way back." Even the royal court that was occupied by the demons had no way of finding out Yi Mo's whereabouts. Yi Shiwen had no other way. What was worse was that from his memory, he learned that the Abyss Demon Master had sent a message back after the incident, telling them to wait patiently. When he returned, it would be the time when he would rule the world. Even with the current strength of the Abyss Demon Master, he could not do it. The only possibility was that he had confirmed his Tao and returned. Thinking of this, Yi Shiwen could not remain calm. Right now, the Abyss Demon Master was like a sharp sword hanging over his head. If he really returned, what would happen? However, with the Abyss Demon Master's strong character, he could actually say such words. Obviously, he was seriously injured and was afraid that he could not control the Demon Masters under him. Those Demon Masters might be loyal to him now, but if they did not have a tyrannical power to suppress them, no one knew what they would do. After learning this important information, Yi Shiwen directly entered the depths of the starry sky. Although the fluctuations caused by the battle between the two of them weren't as everlasting as the battle between deities, it still didn't dissipate completely in such a short time. However, when the two's final battlefield disappeared, the aura was too chaotic. And it was impossible. In the end, Yi Dynasty's battle. Yi Shiwen, who was unable to track them down, could only return to the human race in the profound world. Just as he returned, someone came looking for him. This person was none other than the Nameless Tao Academy's Ying Tianjing. Yi Shiwen didn't make it to the graduation ceremony of the Nameless Tao Academy. Therefore, he didn't see Ying Tianjing again. Ying Tianjing came and went in a hurry every time. Yi Shiwen didn't see him again. "I heard that you caused havoc in the Demon Royal Court?" Ying Tianjing looked at Yi Shiwen with a smile on his face. It had only been a dozen years, but this young man in front of him had already undergone an astonishing transformation. More than 10 years ago, at that time, he could only be considered to have made a name for himself. In the eyes of many older mythical experts, he was just a person with potential who could join their group and become one of them. And after more than 10 years, he had already shown off his abilities. He had killed quite a number of mythical realm experts, and his name had long since spread to many worlds. He felt a little emotional in his heart. As that thing was about to be born, a large number of geniuses would be born. No matter what kind of miracle it was, it didn't seem strange. But even so, it was indeed too shocking for him to be able to cultivate to this level in just a few hundred years. Yi Shiwen didn't find it strange. After all, it was a fact that he had caused havoc in the royal court. With his current fame, there were definitely many people who knew about it. He couldn't hide at all. Moreover, he didn't have any intention of hiding. It was precisely to deter those who had ill intentions. Let me correct you. That is the human race's royal court. Sooner or later, I will take it back, said Yi Shiwen. For him, this had almost become an obsession. But with his current strength, it was enough for him to cause havoc, but he still couldn't take back the royal court that belonged to the human race. Ying Tianjing smiled faintly. He didn't reply. Instead, he said, "Right now, it's widely rumored that Yi Mo disappeared after the battle with the Abyss Demon Master?" Yi Shiwen frowned slightly. It was only a matter of time before this news spread. Ever since Yi Shiwen, who came from the ancient desolation, made a name for himself in the profound world, more and more news about the ancient desolation, which was originally considered to be isolated from the rest of the world, began to attract attention. Such a big matter like him causing havoc in the royal court couldn't be concealed even if he wanted to. As for the matter of Yemo and the Abyss Demon Master, it would also be known sooner or later. At that time, the news that Yemo didn't return would soon be known by the major forces. For the human race that was currently developing, it was tantamount to a disaster. To a large extent, he had caused havoc in the royal court to deter this group of people. Although Yemo was no longer around, the human race wasn't that weak yet. And, facing Ying Tianjing, he didn't lie. In any case, there was nothing to lie about this matter. TSK, a hero of the generation. What a pity! Ying Tianjing sighed faintly. What do you plan to do now? As far as I know, whether it's the Heaven Wasteland Palace, the Divine Union, or anyone else who has designs on your wealth, all of them are getting restless. In that case, I can only kill and fight, Yi Shiwen said with rapt attention. Now that things had come to this, he didn't have any other choice. He only had one trump card in his hand, which might come in handy at the most crucial moment. It was the divine elixir in his hand. That was his final trump card. If it really didn't work, he could only forcefully swallow that divine elixir and forcefully break through. Although this would undoubtedly be a waste, he had no other choice if it really came to that. This was also the reason why he was so calm. Unless the Abyss Demon Master returned, he had nothing to fear. It seems like you have a trump card. Ying Tianjing continued, however, since it's a trump card, it's best not to take it out so easily. I have a suggestion. Do you want to hear it? What is it? Yi Shiwen was also very interested. What else could Ying Tianjing say at this time? I'll come out and warn those who are getting restless so that they won't act rashly. This will allow you to breathe a sigh of relief. Ying Tianjing said. What's the condition? Yi Shiwen said. He was very clear that there was no such thing as a free lunch. If you wanted something, you could only fight for it yourself. It's very simple. I need you to help me win a battle. This is just a small matter, Ying Tianjing said with a smile. In terms of strength, you should be above me. Is there anything that you can't deal with that requires my help? Yi Shiwen was a little puzzled. Ying Tianjing's strength was probably at the half-step Dao validation stage. At the very least, he wouldn't be inferior to the Heaven Wasteland Palace Master and the others. How could there be a problem that he couldn't deal with and needed his help? Because I can't participate in this battle. In other words, there are restrictions, Ying Tianjing said, and you just happen to meet these criteria. What kind of battle? Just tell me. Yi Shiwen said. Ying Tianjing shrugged and said, You should know about the Nameless Dao Academy. Yi Shiwen nodded and said, I know a little. You can't be thinking that the Nameless Dao Academy is really doing good things for free, right? I should have told you this when you graduated, but you weren't around at that time. Too many things have happened during this period of time, so I didn't have the time to tell you. Ying Tianjing looked at Yi Shiwen and said, The Nameless Dao Academy is indeed very mysterious to you. However, its true origin is an existence that belongs to the Hidden Valley. There are many earth-shattering big shots hidden in the Hidden Valley. People like me are nothing in the Hidden Valley. Dao validation experts. Yi Shiwen was keenly aware that the earth-shattering big shots that Ying Tianjing was talking about were very likely the legendary Dao validation experts. In the Xian world, Dao validation experts were indeed at the legendary level. However, it wasn't as if they didn't exist. Just in the historical records of the Xian world, there were many amazing big shots who had finally confirmed their Dao. Without exception, all of these big shots came from the Nameless Dao Academy. Moreover, what was even more puzzling was that these big shots didn't establish their own sects after confirming their Dao. They didn't even leave behind many inheritances, and they left one after another not long after confirming their Dao. This was also a riddle that the Xian world hadn't been able to solve until now. The only explanation for this was that something was attracting them, luring them to leave. Until now, not a single one of them had ever returned. Because of the deeds and legends of these people, there were still countless people in the Xian world who had embarked on the righteous path and fought for it. That's right, Dao validation experts, and there's more than one of them. Ying Tianjing looked at Yi Shiwen and said with a smile. Chapter 2143. Yi Shiwen couldn't keep calm on his face. He revealed a somewhat horrified expression. Yi Mo was by his side, so his horizons were much higher than ordinary people's. He not only knew about Dao confirming experts, but also knew that there were emperor level figures above Dao confirming experts. However, even though he knew about them, and had even seen fallen gods, how could a fallen god and a living god be the same? How could a god at the peak be the same? Moreover, there was more than one of them. What kind of divine being was this hidden valley? Many people think that Dao confirming experts are hard to find. There is no news about Dao confirming experts in the universe. Many people even say that the world has changed and Dao confirming experts are no longer allowed to appear. In fact, these are just some people's delusional guesses. They don't know about it because they haven't reached that level. In other words, they aren't qualified. Ying Tianjing said, "You were originally one of them, so you weren't qualified to know about the matters over there. Even those ordinary mythological experts don't know about the hidden valley because they aren't qualified." Yi Shiwen didn't look embarrassed. Although Ying Tianjing's words were direct, they were indeed the truth. More than a decade ago, he had still been a nobody who hadn't even reached the mythological realm. At that time, he had felt complacent. Only now did he realize that he was still far from reaching that level. The world has changed, but it's far from what they think it is. Ying Tianjing continued. Since there are so many experts in the Hidden Valley, why do I have to take action? Yi Shiwen asked. Although he hadn't completely come into contact with the Hidden Valley, he could imagine what kind of colossus it was from Ying Tianjing's brief introduction. Both the Heaven Wasteland Hall and the Divine Union were far inferior compared to the Hidden Valley. The Heaven Wasteland Hall master was only similar to Ying Tianjing, but Ying Tianjing had said that a person like him was nothing in the Hidden Valley. It was obvious that he was able to see the whole picture. Ying Tianjing said, "Don't be too arrogant, because you are only one of them. We have chosen many people, including your archenemy, Jun Dingtian. He is a seeded player and one of the people we are most optimistic about. You also know that he was the reincarnation of a deity in his previous life, so he has great potential. It would be fine if he developed alone, but now that he has joined the Hidden Valley, there will naturally be people who will help him dig out all his potential. When that time comes, no matter how much you cultivate, it will be difficult to catch up. How can your little tricks be compared to the Hidden Valley?" Jun Dingtian is also in the Hidden Valley? A stern look flashed in Yi Shiwen's eyes. No wonder he couldn't find Jun Dingtian after finding the Heavenly Fox young master and Ghost Fortune young master. That's right, the reincarnation of a deity is not something that can be encountered at any time. Because not all deities are lucky enough to be reincarnated after death. The process of proving one's Tao is a process of breaking away from the world. After proving one's Tao, you will become a foreign object to the world. It is simply impossible for ordinary creatures to reincarnate after death. Basically, you will directly turn into ashes. For such people, as long as they can fully develop their potential, proving one's Tao is just a matter of time. Who knows, they might even be able to go further in this life. Ying Tianjing said, "As far as I know, the conflict between the two of you isn't ordinary. The only failure in his life was at your hands. How can he achieve Tao if he can't kill you? Therefore, once he gains power, it will be the time of your death." "Tell me, what do I want to do?" Yi Shiwen said after taking a deep breath. "Smart. It's so easy to talk to smart people. You only need to know that this is a competition, and the one who stands out will be blessed with great luck. Your future achievements will be limitless, and becoming a god won't be a problem at all. However, the premise is that you have to defeat everyone and stand out from the crowd. Your enemies will be experts from all over the world, and they will all be young geniuses. People like Jun Dingtian might not be everywhere, but it can be said that there are a lot of them. It's not just Dao validation, but also God-level experts. Those are all your targets. As for whether you'll be the hunter or the prey, it's all up to you. There are deities? Isn't that asking me to die? Yi Shiwen immediately shook his head. He was very clear about his own strength. What a joke! How could he be a match for a master who had proved his Dao? Although he was confident, he wasn't arrogant to this extent. Of course, we didn't gather all of you just to send you to your death. Ying Tianjing said, since you've joined our plan, you'll have to forge your own path even if you have a slim chance of survival. However, we won't just stand by and watch. Naturally, there will be a lot of benefits for you. When the time comes, it won't be a problem for you to catch up with Jun Dingtian. As long as you can survive, you'll obtain immeasurable benefits. Do you know how many people want to participate in this plan? However, not everyone has this opportunity. If I was born a few thousand years later, how could I give this opportunity to you? Danger and opportunity coexisted. From Ying Tianjing's words, Yi Shiwen could only hear these few words. There was no free lunch in the world. The greater the benefits, the greater the restrictions, and the greater the danger. Seeing that Yi Shiwen seemed to be hesitating, Ying Tianjing continued to add fuel to the fire. As far as I know, the Abyss Devil Lord is not far from proving his Dao. Seeing that Yi Shiwen still seemed to be hesitating, he continued to add fuel to the fire. As far as I know, the Abyss Devil Lord is not far from proving his Dao. He might return in less than 2 years. With your cultivation speed, it's already shocking that you can cultivate to this level in such a short period of time. However, it's still far from enough. Perhaps one day you will prove your Dao, but you definitely won't be able to catch up with the speed of the Abyss Devil Lord proving his Dao. When that time comes, it's only a matter of time before the entire Xian world falls into enemy hands. Only you can solve this by yourselves. Even the Heaven Realm's human race can't intervene. After all, the demon race isn't without people behind them. You have to think clearly. If you join our plan, there'll still be some hope. To his surprise, Yi Shiwen only hesitated for a moment before saying, I understand now. You guys are breeding insects. You'll pick out the strongest insects from all the realms and throw them together to kill each other. The strongest person will become the Gu King. There will be countless benefits. Although I don't know what you guys are trying to do, this plan is also beneficial to me. I'll participate. Once he had made up his mind, everything was extremely simple. Riches and honor came from danger. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. Good. Since that's the case, our people will also appear when the time comes. Be it the Heaven Wasteland Palace or the Divine Union, they won't have the guts to make a move. Ying Tianjing said, prepare yourself. We'll set off in a month's time. Where are we going? Yi Shiwen asked. The deity transformation abyss. Ying Tianjing replied with a smile. A month passed by quickly. During this month, the news that Yi Mo and the Abyss Demon Master had both been injured and that their whereabouts were unknown spread rapidly. This news had come from ancient times, and many people had personally gone to verify it. It was very credible. The human race didn't make any response to this rumor, and only slowed down the speed of their expansion. Many people immediately understood that this matter wasn't fake. However, many people found it strange that the Heaven Wasteland Palace, the Divine Union, and the other people who were eyeing Yi Shiwen's wealth covetously after confirming that Yi Mo had disappeared did not make any move. They were collectively silent. It was as if they had suddenly become blind and deaf. They couldn't hear or see anything. This made many people who hoped to see an extreme conflict between the two parties feel exceptionally disappointed. Be it the Heaven Wasteland Palace, the Divine Union, or the current Yi Shiwen, they were all behemoths that were far more powerful than they had imagined. Many people also felt that this was strange. However, news soon spread that the experts of the nameless Tao College had personally warned them that they could at least make a move on Yi Shiwen for a certain period of time. It could be used as training, but they absolutely weren't allowed to make a move on his mother's clan. This even involved the human race from the Heaven Realm. It was said that a certain big shot from the Heaven Realm had personally come to take care of them. They naturally had to give face to the nameless Tao College. After all, there were many forces in the mysterious world that more or less had some relations with the nameless Tao College. No one really wanted to provoke the nameless Tao College. Moreover, the experts of the mysterious world who had reached a certain level more or less knew that there was a behemoth standing behind the nameless Tao College. If it wasn't necessary, no one would want to have a conflict with the nameless Tao College. However, this matter became even more confusing. After the nameless Tao College finished teaching, it would naturally disappear and wait for the next 5,000 years to reappear. It basically wouldn't care about the affairs of the students anymore. Even when the leader of the Divine Union was being hunted down, the nameless Tao College didn't appear to speak up for him. Now, it was standing up for Yi Shiwen. Could it be that his talent had really reached an earth-shattering level that even the nameless Tao College couldn't bear to see him disappear? No one knew what kind of secret was behind this. There were all kinds of speculations. During this month of turmoil, Yi Shiwen had also completed his final preparations. This trip might not take a few years, or perhaps he would never return. Therefore, he had to make arrangements. He left the star beast behind and brought the young Kuan Peng to the deification abyss. Chapter 2144. It was an endless void. There was a huge abyss in the depths of the endless plains. Although it was called an abyss, it was actually a huge continent floating in the void. It was far larger than a world, and it had appeared in front of Yi Shiwen's eyes. Even with Yi Shiwen's speed, he had to fly for half a year to follow Ying Tianjing. Finally, he arrived at the transformation abyss in the middle of this huge continent. This continent was in the depths of a cosmic abyss, and it was surrounded by unimaginable void black holes. No one knew what kind of indescribable danger it was. Looking from afar, this entire continent was like a huge wheel of light. It was eternally in the light, and there was no darkness. This wasn't formed naturally, but a powerful space that was opened up by someone with great magic power. Yi Shiwen was surprised to find that he could see the traces of the laws without opening his magic eyes. He could even feel the surrounding laws with his skin. Even though he was knowledgeable and had seen many miracles, he couldn't help but reveal a shocked expression at this time. For a warrior, there was only one way to go further, and that was to comprehend the laws, and to comprehend the heavenly way. The so-called heavenly way was the principle of the operation of the heavenly way. It was said that the heavenly way was ruthless, because the heavenly way itself didn't have any thoughts. It was just the concentrated embodiment of countless laws. And these laws were the most intuitive embodiment of the heavenly way. The more laws one could comprehend, the stronger one's strength would naturally be. Because the more one could comprehend these laws, the more one could use the powerful power behind these laws. Powerful experts didn't even need to use their own strength. They could crush everything in their way by relying on the powerful laws, and no one could match them. But at the same time, it was also because of this that the laws were very difficult to comprehend. Many people couldn't even perceive the existence of the laws. As the saying goes, the matter of comprehending the Tao was extremely mysterious. This was the reason. It couldn't be described in words, and could only be experienced by oneself. And it was difficult for ordinary people to truly comprehend the Tao in their lifetime. Although Yi Shiwen frequently used the mysterious space to comprehend the Tao, the number of times he could comprehend the Tao himself wasn't that many. One could imagine how difficult it was. The most difficult reason was that they were unable to perceive the laws. However, what was going on here? They could actually sense the existence of the laws just by using their skin. They could see the laws without even opening their transcendence vision. It was as if the omnipresent air had suddenly been painted with color and appeared in front of them. This was simply a holy land for cultivation. Even if one didn't have any talent, cultivating here would be comparable to those so-called top-notch geniuses outside. They didn't need to deliberately cultivate at all, and could naturally comprehend the Tao. This wasn't something that could be achieved in any place. If the news of this place were to spread, it would immediately cause a shocking sensation. Countless experts of the world would fight for this place. Can you feel it? The biggest difference between this place and the outside world. Ing Tianjing said with a smile, "Do you know why this place is called the Transformation Abyss? Because this is the place where one can truly transform into a god. The laws here were forced out by the great power of the predecessors, which is why people can feel it so clearly. Cultivating here for a year is comparable to cultivating outside for 100 years. Even experts who have confirmed the Tao will get twice the result with half the effort while cultivating here." Yi Shiwen was shocked, and he couldn't help but be shocked. In the group of divine tombs, this kind of manifestation of the laws could be seen everywhere. But that was after a battle, and the broken laws were manifested. There was no way to comprehend it normally, and it might even become a fatal factor. But this place was complete, and the normal laws were all manifested. It was definitely a holy land of martial arts. Being able to cultivate here gave him a bit more confidence at this time. He was confident that he could catch up with the Abyss Devil Lord. No wonder Ing Tianjing said so. "Let's go, I'll bring you in first," Ing Tianjing said with a smile. The two of them flew in directly. After flying for 3 days and 3 nights, they finally flew into the continent. It could be seen how huge this continent was. They didn't directly enter the continent, but came to the bottom of an incomparably huge iron tower. This iron tower was jet black and had 7 floors. Each floor was like a world of its own. It was incomparably deep, and it was impossible to see what was inside. Pseudo-divine tool. No, it might be a real divine tool, Yi Shiwen said in shock. He didn't expect that he might see a real divine tool as soon as he entered. And this divine tool was placed here like a piece of trash, and no one cared about it at all. Do you find it strange that this is obviously a divine tool, but no one touched it? Ing Tianjing looked at Yi Shiwen's shocked expression, and said with a smile. Yi Shiwen nodded. In the outside world, it was probably already snatching it. Because they're afraid of death. Ing Tianjing said with a serious face, "If you don't want to die, you'd better not have any ideas about it." Yi Shiwen nodded and didn't ask why. "Come with me, let's go to the place where the newcomers register. TSK, several evildoers are finally going to meet." "Interesting, very interesting." Ing Tianjing laughed heartily and led Yi Shiwen to the other side of the tower. However, he saw that there was already a large group of people waiting for him at this time. Yi Shiwen looked into the distance, and saw that there were dozens of people. These people were either in groups of 3 or 5, talking, or standing alone at the side. However, the only thing they had in common was that each of them was exuding a peerless ominous aura. That incomparably huge ominous aura swept out, and could even form a storm. Indeed, as Ing Tianjing said, there were all kinds of races in these people. Most of them were mainly in human form, and some of them had retained some of the characteristics of their original race. There were also some who simply maintained the form of powerful ominous beasts. It was unknown what kind of environment they lived in, but they actually had such terrifying strength long ago. Yi Shiwen looked over, and all of these people were experts of the legendary level. Every one of them was unfathomable, and it could almost be said that they were invincible among those of the same level. Every one of them seemed to be able to challenge those of a higher level, and their strength was tyrannical beyond imagination. You wait here, someone will come to receive you. I'll be leaving first. Oh, by the way, let me take your little Kuan Pung with me. You should know that he's the most powerful king of our bird race, and the old ancestor will definitely like him very much if he sees him. Although his innate talent isn't bad, you won't be able to display his true strength with your nurturing technique. Let the old ancestor teach this little guy a lesson, and the next time you see him, he'll definitely shock you. Ing Tian looked towards Yi Shiwen and said. Yi Shiwen pondered. Indeed, as Ing Tianjing said, he was basically raising the little Kuan Pung like a sheep, and basically didn't manage it much. He was relying on his extraordinary talent to forcibly support it. If it were someone else, they might really be raised into a useless person, but the little Kuan Pung was still growing strong and healthy. But if this continued, it would indeed be a waste of his talent, but he didn't trust Ing Tianjing to the extent that he could trust him to take the little Kuan Pung away. Don't worry, I know better than you what the Kuan Pung means to our race. It's really a pity to hand over such a talent to you, Ing Tianjing said with a smile. At this time, the little Kuan Pung also seemed to have heard it, and directly flew out of the Tianyuan mirror, and flew to Ing Tianjing's shoulder. This was the first time that Yi Shiwen saw the little Kuan Pung being so close to someone other than himself, and it might really be because they were of the same race. Well, if that's the case, then I'll entrust this little guy to you in the future, and you must take good care of him, Yi Shiwen said. Don't worry, I'll do it even if you don't say it. You don't need to make this expression, it's not like we're going to be separated forever, it's just letting the old ancestor train him, Ing Tianjing said with a smile. After saying that, Ing Tianjing disappeared into the void with the little Kuan Pung. The movement on this side had also attracted the attention of those powerful foreign race powerhouses, and their gazes directly swept over, containing formidable oppressive power. Each of these foreign race people could be called a peerless powerhouse, and it was difficult to meet a rival in the same realm, and they were enough to sweep a world. However, there were also a few people among these people who had caught his attention, and their strength seemed to be far above the rest. The first one was a three-eyed monkey, and his stature was as tall as an average person, but he was thin and small, and his whole body was covered with long golden hair, and there was a vertical eye on his forehead, which was particularly eye-catching. He was waving a golden stick in his hand, and it seemed as if the earth, fire, water, and wind were revolving while he was waving it. This was an extremely outstanding stick technique, and it was very powerful. The second one was a teenager dressed in black, and he looked no different from a human, except that there was a red mole on his forehead, and he looked like a gigolo with red lips and white teeth, but it made him look even more extraordinary. He was carrying a cyan long sword on his back, and it had never been unsheathed, but it was faintly exuding terrifying power. The third one was a giant toad lying on the ground, and its eyes were green. Its whole body was like a small mountain, and it looked very huge, and its body was exuding a faintly discernible poisonous gas. Blue-eyed golden toad. Yi Shiwen recognized this last one through the awakened memories from the star beast's bloodline. In the distant past, this blue-eyed golden toad was also a very terrifying ancient vicious beast. Once it jumped, the earth would shake and the mountains would shake. It was as easy as eating a meal for it to poison a world. Chapter 2145. The primordial world mutants were very impressive. However, this was only Yi Shiwen's opinion. In the eyes of others, Yi Shiwen was just a mere Paong Realm 6th level. In terms of strength, he was just enough to be ranked among them. However, this was only Yi Shiwen's opinion. In the eyes of the others, Yi Shiwen was just a mere Paong Realm expert at the 6th level. In terms of strength, he was barely qualified to be one of them. It was simply nothing. Even many powerful existences in the Paong Realm 9th level should be difficult to deal with these three people. In the eyes of others, Yi Shiwen was just a mere Paong Realm 6th level. In terms of strength, he was just enough to be ranked among them. Among these people, any one of them was the existence of the Paong realm's 6th level or above. The 3 powerful existences that Yi Shiwen paid special attention to were without exception the most powerful existences in the Paong realm 8th level. Once they entered the Paong realm 9th level, they would be the real peak of the myth. Unless the Master of Dao confirmation took action, otherwise, they would be almost invincible. Everyone was waiting. Suddenly, the incomparably huge blue-eyed golden toad opened its mouth. After glancing at everyone, it said, "I don't know where you all came from, but I heard that there are countless experts in the deification abyss. We are new here. If we don't unite, we will inevitably be bullied by those old people." Everyone took a look at this blue-eyed golden-eye toad. It was obvious that this blue-eyed golden-eye toad had a foothold. When the others didn't know what was going on here, it actually knew something about the situation inside. "I have no objection, but who will be the leader?" The monkey chuckled and asked the most crucial question. Every single one of these people was a peerless genius. Perhaps there was a temporary difference in strength between them, but when it came to talent, who would be willing to admit that they were inferior to anyone else? It did not matter if they united, but no one was willing to surrender to others. In other worlds, they were all heroes. There was no reason to come here and become someone else's subordinate, become someone else's servant. Everyone had concerns in their hearts. No one was willing to surrender to others and become someone else's subordinate. The young man with the sword on his back didn't even look at the blue-eyed golden-eyed toad. He wasn't tempted by his suggestion at all. Everyone lowered their heads. They knew what this blue-eyed golden-eyed toad was thinking. He had made such a suggestion because he wanted to be their leader. These people were not stupid, so they naturally would not agree to his idea. These people were all extremely powerful, and their ambitions were higher than the heavens. How could they submit, even if it was a primordial beast like the blue-eyed golden toad? Seeing that no one responded, the blue-eyed golden-eyed toad's expression turned ugly. He didn't say anything and directly transformed into his human form. It was a young man with a strange face. He had a pair of blue and golden eyes, but there were some pimples on his face. He looked very strange. There are some newcomers today. Everyone says that the newcomers this time are amazing. TSK, I wonder if it's true. Just when the atmosphere at the scene was a little tense, 2 figures appeared in front of everyone. One was fat and the other was thin. The fat one had a big tail behind him. No one knew what race he was from. The thin and tall warrior looked no different from an ordinary human. As they spoke, they looked at the experts who were waiting, and their eyes inevitably showed some disdain. These 2 people looked at the crowd and said, "You are the newcomers this time. Although you are still considered a character outside, don't think that your behavior outside can be brought in. In our deity transformation abyss, the so-called geniuses are just ordinary goods. If you can be obedient and honest, there will naturally be benefits for you. However, if you don't know what's good for you, then you will suffer when the time comes. Especially humans, it's best not to provoke me. Our clan is a famous cannibal clan." The short and fat man looked at Yi Shiwen greedily, as if he had seen some delicious food. Everyone's eyes swept and all looked at Yi Shiwen. Because among the people present, although they were all in human form, in fact, Yi Shiwen was the only human. "Cannibal clan? I want to see what kind of thing you are," Yi Shiwen said without showing weakness. "Human, are you planning to provoke me?" The short and fat alien glanced at Yi Shiwen. "I like to eat human flesh the most in my life, especially the flesh of those geniuses. It's the most delicious." As he said, an amazing light bloomed in his eyes. "Oh, is that so? You are a senior in this deity transformation abyss. I also want to see the level of the legendary experts in the deity transformation abyss. Is it all this kind of trash?" Yi Shiwen sneered disdainfully. He could feel that this short and fat alien clearly came for him from the beginning. His purpose was obvious. He wanted to take the opportunity to stir up trouble. However, he was not a soft persimmon now. Just anyone could pinch him. The faces of the two aliens suddenly changed. This Yi Shiwen was slapping their faces in public. Uncle can bear it, but Aunt can't bear it. Human, I think you are tired of living. Sure enough, you are as arrogant and despotic as the rumors say. The short and fat alien was obviously angry. His eyes were full of killing intent as he looked at Yi Shiwen. Among the people present, which one was not a smart person? They immediately understood that these two were clearly coming for Yi Shiwen. Obviously, they had heard about this human long ago. They were a little surprised. Who was this human? He could actually spread his reputation to the deity transformation abyss. The masters here were like clouds. It was not a legend, but a real fact. A legend master was enough to dominate a region in the outside world. Here, no one was gentle and quiet. Even in the depths of the deity transformation abyss, it was said that there were masters who had confirmed the Tao. These people were all domineering in the outside world. But even so, after they entered the deity transformation abyss, they could only choose to live with their tails between their legs. They even had the idea of forming a group. One could imagine what kind of place this was. This Yi Shiwen seemed to have offended someone inside as soon as he came in. It seemed that his future days would not be easy. Some people who originally wanted to make friends with the only human suddenly lost interest. If they were really implicated, it would not be good. Although they were not afraid of trouble, they did not want to cause trouble unless it was a critical time. The kind of idiots who caused trouble everywhere were in the minority. Either their brains were caught in the door, or they had a strong backing. Since you are coming for me, then don't talk nonsense. I also want to see the level of the legendary deity transformation abyss and see if it is only at this level. Yi Shiwen shouted. Good boy, let's see how long you can be so stubborn. At this time, the short and fat alien's eyes burst with a hint of fierceness. He directly spread out his hand and suddenly clawed down towards Yi Shiwen. A few bright blood-colored lightning bolts fell directly from his claw. These lightning bolts were not ordinary lightning bolts, but were composed of many talismans. They had great power when they were casually cast. This was a short and fat person from a different race. Although he looked short and fat, his speed was shockingly fast. In the blink of an eye, he had already pounced on Lin Fan. His body was bursting with a frightening aura. His cultivation base had actually reached the 7th level of the Paong realm and was extremely strong. His face showed a bit of a fierce expression. In his opinion, Yi Shiwen, who was only at the 6th level of Paong realm, could not escape in any way. Everything was as he had guessed at the beginning. Yi Shiwen did not dodge at all. He actually watched the alien pounce in front of him. Go to hell, damn human. As long as you die, the Lord will be satisfied. At that time we can also get a lot of rewards. Only this level of speed? Too slow. Suddenly, Yi Shiwen opened his eyes, and a burst of light flashed in his eyes. Then, he suddenly made his move. Unexpectedly, his attack arrived first, and directly turned into a big palm, and suddenly slapped towards the short and fat foreigner. Bang! The short and fat alien could only watch Yi Shiwen's big slap coming towards him. He could not dodge it at all. It was so close to killing Yi Shiwen, but it was so close that he was slapped by Yi Shiwen. His round body directly rotated at high speed like a top. He flew directly to the side, and then slammed into the incomparably huge tower. Then, he was directly bounced out by the defensive formation on the tower. He was like a ball. The whole scene looked incomparably funny. But none of the people present had the intention to laugh. Although the short and fat alien was only at the peak of the 7th heaven of Paong realm, and there were many people who were stronger than him, the human was only at the 6th heaven of Paong realm, and he could casually slap an expert who was at a higher realm than him away. This kind of strength was simply incredible. Everyone's face flashed a look of surprise. This deity transformation abyss was really a place of crouching tigers and hidden dragons. Not to mention others, just among this group of people there were many tyrannical masters. If it was not for the short and fat alien, how would everyone know that Yi Shiwen actually had such tyrannical strength? Ah, damn it, I'm going to kill you! This short and stout foreigner suddenly seemed to have gone mad. He rushed towards Yi Shiwen while screaming. He seemed to be on the verge of going crazy. He had never looked so miserable before. Chapter 2146. This short and fat alien opened his bloody mouth. His mouth was full of sharp teeth, and they spat out a fierce light. His mouth was engraved with patterns, and his great way was directly engraved on his mouth. It could be seen that more than half of his cultivation was probably in his mouth. The cannibal clan specialized in eating humans, which was why they had such a name. His body flashed with an unimaginable fierceness. In an instant, he rushed over again. He opened his bloody mouth, and the void slightly fluctuated, as if he was going to swallow everything in one bite. He had the power to swallow the sky. Facing this crazy short and fat alien, Yi Shiwen's expression didn't change at all. He just sneered, opened his 5 fingers again, and slapped fiercely. Bang! This short and fat alien suddenly spun rapidly like a huge top, and his whole body flew directly into the distance, like a kite with a broken string, directly smashing the space behind him. One could imagine how powerful Yi Shiwen's strength was. Didn't I say that this speed is too slow? Looking at Yi Shiwen's leisurely look, everyone was a little dumbfounded. The short and fat alien was not weak, but he was slapped twice by Yi Shiwen as if he was playing with a ball. This was 2 times, not 1 time. The first time could be said to be a little lucky, but the second time was the real manifestation of strength. So fast. Everyone's face showed a somewhat serious expression. They were very clear that this scene seemed like a joke, and what kind of message was contained. Yi Shiwen's attacks were fast and ruthless, and he could actually bully this short and fat alien to such an extent. It was conceivable that his real combat strength was far more tyrannical than his combat strength looked. Fortunately, there was this short and fat alien to explore the way. Otherwise, if they underestimated him and had a conflict with him, wouldn't it be terrible? Perhaps at this time, it would not be the short and fat alien who would be slapped away, but themselves. Even the young man, the monkey, and the blue-eyed golden-eyed toad looked at Yi Shiwen in surprise. They were blind, and they actually did not see that this human was actually so strong. This was different from their understanding. They had seen human powerhouses in the past, but those were some special physique. The person in front of them obviously had an ordinary physique, but he could actually cultivate to this extent. It was completely incredible. So it is. Yi Shiwen said lightly, "Tell me, what are you in the end?" As soon as Yi Shiwen's voice fell, he had already appeared in front of that short and fat alien. That short and fat alien was directly slapped until he felt dizzy. He felt as if his entire skull was about to be smashed apart. He had barely managed to get up when he found out that Yi Shiwen had already arrived in front of him. That incomparably huge sole of his foot had ruthlessly trampled on him. Pah! With a crisp sound, the sole of Yi Shiwen's foot stepped directly on the face of the short and fat alien, and mercilessly slammed directly into the ground, directly smashing a big hole. Everything happened too fast. Almost in an instant, everyone saw that the short and fat man's face was directly trampled by Yi Shiwen's foot. Only then did they finally react. Such a fast speed. If the speed that everyone was talking about just now was Yi Shiwen's attack speed, then now they had a clear understanding of Yi Shiwen's agility. A guy who could only rely on speed and strength to deal with a master of Paong Realm 7th level, could it be that the strength of this guy was even above Paong Realm 8th level? "Why don't you tell me who you are?" Yi Shiwen said fiercely, but his foot did not stop trampling down. Bang! 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 Yi Shiwen's feet continued to step on the ground. Every step he took seemed to be able to create a huge hole in the ground. With every step he took, the big hole under his feet, which had been created by the collision of the chunky alien, would directly expand by a circle and become even bigger. The short and fat alien wanted to struggle, but he couldn't break free at all. All the attacks that he broke out, all the momentum, and all the chi, were all trampled into pieces by Yi Shiwen's seemingly ordinary foot. Everyone listened to the screams of the short and fat alien from afar, and they all felt a little sour. His whole head was almost trampled by Yi Shiwen. Thinking about what kind of scene they would be in, they couldn't help but take a breath of cold air, and then quickly shook their heads. Damn it, how can this human be so tyrannical? Shouldn't humans be docile and easy to bully? Tyrannical, this was precisely the tyrannical Yi Shiwen. His eyes turned blood-red, and he didn't care about being affected by the star beast's bloodline. He seemed to be venting the depression in his heart during this period of time. Yi Mo's disappearance, the depression in his heart was about to burst out. Why don't you transform into your original form and eat me? Change, change, change. Yi Shiwen's voice echoed in the entire empty square. Everyone was a little embarrassed. Suddenly, they felt that it looked more tyrannical than directly grabbing a person and exploding him. Some experts who had eaten people in their daily lives felt a little tremble at this time. Damn it, there is such a ferocious guy in the human race. It will be terrible if they are really chopped up by him. Among the people present, the only ones who were completely unaffected were the sword-carrying teenager, the monkey and the blue-eyed golden toad. Because the three of them were confident that their strength should be above Yi Shiwen's, so they didn't even bat an eyelid. The short and fat alien no longer had any resistance at this time because any resistance seemed to be useless in front of Yi Shiwen. Every time he tried to resist, Yi Shiwen would crush him with one foot. His head was about to be crushed. Yi Shiwen's strength could simply blow up a planet with his bare hands. Such a force completely crushed his head. It was conceivable how terrifying the effect would be. If it weren't for the fact that most of his cultivation was on his head, which was strong enough, he would have been crushed at this time. This terrifying human made him feel despair for the first time. And at this time, the tall and thin alien finally couldn't stand it anymore. He made a move and roared, "Damn you, where do you think this is? A place where you can be presumptuous?" He roared and took a step forward, tearing open the space and directly blasting in front of Yi Shiwen. His whole person was like a ball of flame and lightning, directly pouncing behind Yi Shiwen. He suddenly blasted out a martial arts torrent, smashing towards Yi Shiwen's back. The aura of his whole body erupted like a ball of flame. His strength was at the 8th level of Paong realm. Compared to the short and fat alien, he was more powerful, and not just by a little bit. It was very impressive. Get out of my way. And at this critical moment, Yi Shiwen finally made a move. He directly turned around, and then slapped out a big palm, instantly smashing the martial arts torrent that bombarded over. Like glass, it shattered inch by inch in front of everyone. It was completely unimaginable that this martial arts torrent, which was sent out by a master at the 8th level of Paong realm, was actually so easily defeated. And Yi Shiwen's big palm did not slow down, and slapped the body of the tall and thin alien. Bang! There was a loud noise, and everyone seemed to hear the sound of a star hitting the earth. They saw that the master at the 8th level of Paong realm was directly sent flying on the spot. His whole body slammed into the huge tower on the side, and then rolled down. On his powerful demigod body, there were actually cracks densely covering his whole body. Everyone suddenly only felt their scalp tingling. What kind of heavy blow had he suffered to form such dense and terrifying cracks? It was simply unimaginable. At this time, even the young man with a sword on his back, the golden-haired monkey, and the blue-eyed golden toad's face suddenly became dignified. They could ignore the fact that a master at the 7th level of Paong realm was casually slapped away, because they could also do it. But even a master at the 8th level of Paong realm was casually slapped as if he was about to be smashed. Even they dared not say that they could do it to this extent. At this moment, in the eyes of the crowd, his huge palm was much more terrifying than any divine weapon. Any kind of resistance seemed to be unable to withstand a single blow from his huge palm. It was directly smashed into smithereens. He was not a match at all. At this time, no one would look down on him because he was a human. And it seemed that at this time, Yi Shiwen finally finished venting, and finally stopped. He let go of the short and fat alien who was trampled on by him, and said faintly, "This is the level of deity transformation abyss, is it only SOSO? You are that Yi Shiwen? You have some courage, some ability, but don't think that you can look down on our deity transformation abyss just because you won against a few trash." Boom! An incomparably loud piercing sound came directly from afar, like a sound wave sweeping across, directly blowing up the dust on the ground, causing sand and pebbles to fly. Everyone looked again, only to see that there was already a young man in a white robe on the field, but they saw that this young man had a handsome face, with 2 huge horns on his head, looked a bit more powerful. No one knew when this young man in a white robe had already faintly confronted Yi Shiwen, and the powerful momentum of both sides burst out, sweeping out in circles. Chapter 2147. It seems that my name has spread to the deity transformation abyss? Yi Shiwen's lips curled into a sarcastic smile. Well, you're quite famous. The white-robed young man suddenly withdrew his aura and said faintly, "Because it's rare to see such a daring guy. You should still remember the old tiger-headed venerable." After being reminded, Yi Shiwen suddenly remembered everything. The tiger-headed venerable. It turned out that the source of everything was the tiger-headed venerable. He remembered everything. Shortly after he killed the tiger-headed venerable, he was informed that the tiger-headed venerable had an extremely powerful disciple who was now sprinting on the final road to Tao validation. Initially, he didn't pay too much attention to it. His disciple had also sent people to cause trouble for him previously, and he had even exerted his influence to affect the plans of the nameless Tao College. However, that was the end of it. After all, that was an expert in a distant world who didn't know when he would step into Tao validation. Although there was only one last step left, this last step might be tomorrow, 100 years, or even 1,000 years later. Therefore, he didn't care too much about it. Even in the next few years, it didn't seem to cause too much trouble. However, now he finally realized that if this plan was a plan used by the Hidden Valley to select genius disciples, then how could the disciple of the tiger-headed venerable, who was known as a peerless genius, not be among them? In other words, it was very likely that he would meet that person in the deity transformation abyss in the future. Although he hadn't met with that person yet, he had already felt the trouble that person brought him. Do you remember now? This matter has caused quite a stir among us. The white-robed young man glanced at Yi Shiwen and said, "Jing Tianlei's temper isn't very good, but there's one good thing about him. He is extremely respectful to his teacher. Even though his teacher's cultivation is far inferior to his, he didn't disrespect him for a moment. Now that you've killed his teacher, it's equivalent to touching his reverse scale. TSK, this matter is really big. That old guy relied on Jing Tianlei's support and was used to being domineering here. Now that he's dead in your hands, should we applaud and celebrate, or what?" Yi Shiwen calmed himself down and said, "Anyway, he's already dead, so what can he do?" "Good, so what if you're good? But I'm afraid that guy already hates you. If it wasn't for the fact that he's in a critical moment of his closed-door cultivation, I'm afraid he would have come out immediately to kill you." The white-robed youth said with a smile, "So, you've become famous before you even come in. Huyen Aanu, this newcomer is too arrogant. You can't just watch and do nothing. The short and fat man finally managed to get up and quickly spoke to the white-robed youth. Shut up, you two pieces of trash. You've been here for decades, right? You can't even bully a newcomer who hasn't even cultivated in the deification abyss. If word of this gets out, I'll feel ashamed. You're not my subordinates. Otherwise, I would have killed you long ago to save myself from making a fool of myself. The white-robed youth's complexion suddenly changed. He no longer had a pleasant look on his face and directly reprimanded them. The two legends who were reprimanded by him like dogs didn't even dare to say a word of rebuttal. They didn't even dare to show a trace of resentment. They were afraid that the person in front of them would see them and kill them on the spot. Even if he did so, there wouldn't be too much punishment because they weren't on the same level. Still not getting out of here? I'm in charge today, yet you dare to cause trouble. Seeing that you've already been taught a miserable lesson, I won't argue with you anymore. Otherwise, do you still think you can keep your martial arts? Get out of here. Huyen Aanu sneered and said without any trace of politeness. The two of them immediately scrambled to escape. They stepped on the conveyance light and disappeared without a trace. They didn't dare to stay any longer. It was as if they had seen the most terrifying monster. They hated their parents for giving them two legs. They didn't even give Yi Shiwen a chance to speak ruthlessly. Although these two pieces of trash aren't much, you've beaten up an old man today. This is not a good sign. If I don't show you newcomers my strength, I'm afraid you'll really think that the deification abyss is an ordinary place. Huyen Aanu faintly looked at Yi Shiwen. Suddenly, an astonishing light burst out from her eyes. Her whole body's imposing aura was like a landslide, like a tsunami was released. All of it was overwhelming and crushed towards Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen was surprised to find that the space around him was completely sealed. No matter how hard he tried to break free, it was useless. This coercion directly impacted his divine sense, allowing him to see a kind of earth-shattering strength. It was almost not inferior to the divine union leader and the desolate Heaven Temple Lord who he had fought before. Although the two of them had joined forces and were still beaten by Yi Shiwen, it was only because they had borrowed divine power. Moreover, it was only for a short period of time. The real strength of these two people was still tyrannical and terrifying. This person could actually be mentioned in the same breath as these two experts who had been famous in the mysterious world for countless years. Huyen Aanu suddenly had a bad feeling in his heart. It seemed that he had underestimated the deification abyss. Any random youth here was a terrifying existence at the peak of the myth realm. This was simply unimaginable in other places. Today, I'll let you see the strength of the deification abyss. As soon as Huyen Aanu's voice fell, he clenched his 5 fingers into a fist and directly punched towards Yi Shiwen. His punch was like a meteor piercing the earth, smashing the night sky, dragging along an unimaginable astonishing power along the way. It didn't seem to be very fast, but it was extremely fast. In the next moment it had already arrived in front of Yi Shiwen, and Yi Shiwen was deterred by its imposing aura at this time, and couldn't move at all. This was the crushing of a powerful superior to an inferior one. Some incomparably powerful races could even pass down this kind of innate power as a bloodline power. For example, in the demon race, the superior demon race had an overwhelming advantage over the inferior demon race. Even if they were in the same realm, the superior demon race could still crush the inferior demon race. Break for me. Yi Shiwen mobilized all the qi in his body. Countless divinities rushed out and directly rushed out, smashing the imposing aura that was like a shackle on his body. Swish! Yi Shiwen's fist directly passed through the mass of golden light, and he reappeared 100 feet away. He hadn't dodged too far away, and had barely managed to evade the attack at the last moment. This punch was too strong. Although he had dodged Huyen Aanu's seemingly casual punch, Yi Shiwen's face was already pale. At the critical moment, his whole body was about to fall apart. His whole body was already drenched in sweat. Not only was he drenched in sweat, but even the sword-carrying youth, the golden-haired monkey, and the arrogant blue-eyed golden toad who were watching from afar had a shocked expression on their faces. From afar, that punch just now didn't seem like much. It was just a casual punch from Huyen Eanu that Yi Shiwen had dodged. But looking at Yi Shiwen's appearance, it seemed as if he had just experienced a great battle. Obviously, this was not as simple as they had imagined. Even Yi Shiwen, who they thought was extremely fast, had a hard time dodging. It was conceivable that this fist was not simple. If it were them, they might not be able to dodge it. Huyen Eanu, who had just appeared, immediately gave everyone a show of strength. Suddenly, they became a bit more vigilant in their hearts. You actually dodged it. You do have some skill, no wonder you are so arrogant, Huyen Eanu said indifferently. It seemed like she didn't care that he had dodged her punch. This is a punch from the peak of mythical realm, haha. Contrary to everyone's expectations, Yi Shiwen was not depressed at all. In fact, he didn't even show a depressed expression. He was just a little excited. Yes, he was excited. Although he had barely dodged the punch, he knew that he had the ability to protect himself against a peak mythical realm expert. This was what made him the happiest. Although he had previously abused the Heaven Wasteland Temple Master and the Divine Union Leader, it was only with the help of divine power. His own strength was far from reaching this level. When he was seriously injured by the Abyss Demon Master and almost died, he had to recuperate for hundreds of years. He still had a deep impression of that. That was the true power of a peak mythical realm expert. The few opponents he had provoked seemed to be terrifying existences at the peak of mythical realm. The fact that he could dodge Huyen Eanu's punch naturally meant that he had the ability to protect himself. Although Huyen Eanu might not have used her full strength, he had not used his full strength either. He had not reached his peak state yet. He had not even used his trump card yet. Now that he had stepped into the 6th level of Pawang realm, he could actually do what he couldn't do before. How could this not be worth being happy about? He had truly tested the peak of his current strength. Huyen Eanu, I will remember your name. Yi Shiwen calmed down and said. Yi Shiwen, right? I'll remember your name. You're quite interesting. Maybe there will be some unexpected changes in you. Huyen Eanu said in her heart. Although I didn't use my full strength just now, I used 50% of it. Ordinary 9th level Pawang realm experts would find it difficult to dodge. Interesting. Chapter 2148. Huyen Eanu smiled and looked at Yi Shiwen. She did not continue to attack. It seemed that, as she said before, she only wanted to teach the newcomers a lesson and let them know the immensity of heaven and earth. The effect was already very obvious. Although she failed to teach Yi Shiwen a lesson, she had achieved her original goal. At this time, these arrogant newcomers had already put away their contempt. Especially after the poor performance of the two in front of Yi Shiwen, they did not have the slightest reverence for deification abyss. Just as Yi Shiwen said, it was only SOSO. Although they had been warned many times before coming, when it came to the critical moment in their eyes, it was still so unbearable. Moreover, they were the heroes of their own regions, so they would not easily recognize the strength of others. Now, these people were obviously a bit afraid of deification abyss, or at least this unknown Huyen Eanu. Okay, you newcomers, let me introduce myself first. Alright, you newcomers, let me introduce myself first. My name is Huyen Eanu, and I am currently your guide. I will be responsible for bringing you into the deity transformation abyss. Additionally, I am also responsible for explaining some things about the deity transformation abyss to you. These things are very important for your future life in the deity transformation abyss. However, I will only say it once and not a second time. You better listen carefully, otherwise, if you miss something and suffer a loss in the future, don't blame me. Huyen Eanu said. The pagoda in front of you is called Deification Pagoda. It is the true essence of our deification abyss. This pagoda is divided into a total of 7 floors. Every time, there are many martial arts manuals and insights left behind by the previous generations. There are even powerful seniors who attracted the great Tao and bound it here. If you can cultivate inside, your cultivation will advance by leaps and bounds. Everyone couldn't help but be a little stunned after hearing this. Even with their cultivation and status, they couldn't help but sigh with emotion when they heard this. It was simply incredible. To them, the great Tao was a mystery within a mystery that could not be described with words. If they were able to comprehend a thing or two about it, it would be extremely beneficial to their cultivation. Furthermore, there was actually someone who was able to guide the great Tao over and bind it with their powers. This was practically a miracle. Even if it were the gods, there might not be anyone who could do that. Then can we go in and comprehend it? At this moment, the young man with the sword on his back opened his mouth. Before this, he had not spoken a word. It was as if all of this had nothing to do with him. But now, he finally spoke. Of course you can. As newcomers, you are qualified to meditate inside for 7 days. After that, you must come out. Huyen Eanu looked at the crowd and said with a hint of ridicule in her eyes. Of course. What? Only 7 days? So short? What can we comprehend in such a short time? Everyone was in an uproar. Once these myth realm experts entered seclusion to comprehend, they could easily go into seclusion for hundreds of years, or even thousands of years. It was as common as having a meal. A mere 7 days was not even enough for the snap of a finger. What was there to do? Do you think 7 days is a short time? For you, 7 days is already very long. Even if you only cultivate for a day in this God-transforming tower, the harvest will be comparable to decades of seclusion outside. Huyen Eanu said. Everyone could not help but widen their eyes. If 1 day's harvest was comparable to decades of seclusion outside, then wouldn't it mean that if they continued to cultivate here, they would be able to quickly break through to the Tao-confirming realm? Thinking of this, everyone's eyes suddenly became excited, and they all became eager. Proving one's Tao was practically the ultimate dream for them, and this God Transformation Tower was practically equivalent to a cheating device. If they could cultivate in it, it would naturally bring unimaginable benefits to their cultivation. But don't think too easily. Although cultivating here is extremely fast, those insights are just insight. If you can't convert them into cultivation, then sooner or later, you will lose your mind and be lost in the sea of great Tao. This will lose the meaning of the God-transforming tower, Huyen Eanu said. Hearing this, everyone's eyes clearly calmed down. They were not fools, and their cultivation was even more profound. They could be called grandmasters of a generation. How could they not understand this? But even so, this God-transforming tower was still very heaven-defying. Since you said that we are allowed to cultivate here as newcomers, then what are the conditions if we want to come here to comprehend in the future? The golden-haired monkey opened his mouth, and immediately grasped the key point in Huyen Eanu's words. Smart. Don't think that there are only 7 floors in this God-transforming tower. Each floor has a great mystery. You newcomers are only allowed to cultivate on the lowest floor of the God-transforming tower. Huyen Eanu said, after these 7 days, if you want to enter to cultivate, you will have to use points to exchange for it. Only with enough points will you be qualified to enter. Once your points are used up, you will have to quickly come out. Then, how do we earn points? Yi Shiwen asked. It's very simple. Complete various tasks and use various materials, including Xinyuan, to exchange for points. Huyen Eanu glanced at Yi Shiwen and seemed to have a hidden meaning. In addition, your main source of points comes from fighting. Yes, I think you should have some understanding of the purpose of selecting you here. There is no such thing as a free lunch in this world. You are here for a purpose, and this purpose is very simple, and that is to fight. Every 6 months there will be a competition here. As long as you can break into the top 100, you will naturally have a lot of points for you to use. The strong will always be strong, and the weak will always be weak. This was the only sentence that appeared in Yi Shiwen's mind. From Huyen Ayanu's words, it was not difficult for Yi Shiwen to judge that this was a world where the strong would always be strong, and the weak would always be weak. As long as they were able to rank high in the competition, they would naturally be able to obtain more points. With more points, they would be able to do more things and become stronger. Before the next ranking competition, they would also become stronger. On the other hand, the weak would never be allocated enough points and resources, so they would become weaker and weaker. This further verified Yi Shiwen's original idea. What the Hidden Valley was doing in the God Transformation Abyss was like cultivating goo insects. It wasn't to promote everyone and cultivate the entire force. On the contrary, it was clearly to select the best of the best and the strongest of the strong. It was to cultivate a top-notch powerhouse. From this, it could be inferred that the Hidden Valley did not need a group of experts. It only needed the strongest expert. In other words, this game, or rather, this competition, in the end, there could only be one winner. There could only be one winner. And to become the winner, the benefits to the individual could be imagined. It was simply immeasurable. As long as I break into the top 100, I can get a lot of points? What happens if I make it into the top 10? The blue-eyed golden-eye toad began to ask. Top 10? You guys better not bite off more than you can chew. This time, you are a group of newcomers. If one of you can break into the top 100, it would already be quite amazing. Although you guys are known as the highest quality newcomers, you are still far from it. Huyen Ayanu glanced at the blue-eyed golden toad and said, You should know that anyone who can enter the top 100 is an existence that has broken through to the 9th level of the Pawang realm. They are famous in the outside world at the peak of the mythical realm. With your current strength, don't even think about entering the top 100 in the short term. Everyone was stunned. It was hard to imagine. They were very clear how rare it was to reach the 9th level of Pawang realm in the outside world. Even they had to lower their heads in front of such an existence. But here, it was only a condition to enter the top 100. How many experts were there here? This time, everyone finally put away their contempt for deity transformation abyss. The cultivation conditions here were incomparably superior. A group of geniuses had entered for hundreds or even thousands of years. It was simply unimaginable to what extent they could cultivate. You should also be one of them. I don't know. May I ask, among these experts, what rank are you? Yi Shiwen looked up at Huyen Ayanu and said. There was a bit of interest in his eyes. In the last ranking competition, I only managed to reach the 11th place. Huyen Ayanu said. Everyone took a deep breath. Huyen Ayanu had only made one move, yet she was able to subdue everyone. This kind of strength was impossible for them to match. But even so, she was only ranked 11th. What kind of strength did she have to fight for the top 10? Could it be that there was a legendary god among them? What's wrong? Are you scared? Huyen Ayanu said. No, I'm just a little excited. Yi Shiwen suddenly smiled and said. It was unknown when a touch of blood had emerged in his eyes. Isn't it interesting to have so many powerful opponents? This place did not disappoint me. I want to become stronger. I want to become stronger in a short period of time. There is no place more suitable for me than here. Everyone was somewhat stunned as they looked at Yi Shiwen, who was showing off his abilities. They felt somewhat ashamed and annoyed in their hearts. They were not ashamed and annoyed with Yi Shiwen, but they were actually frightened by him. They even faintly doubted whether they had the ability to stand here. If Yi Shiwen's words hadn't woken them up, at least half of them would have lost their confidence and would have been eliminated in a short time. Chapter 2149. For them, this might mean that they had lost their only chance to truly prove their Tao. On the contrary, this is just the beginning. The third region doesn't keep idle people. Only the top 1,000 people can stay here. Only those who can squeeze into the top 1,000 in the ranking competition are qualified to stay. Usually, the elimination rate of newcomers is as high as 90%. The quality of your newcomers this time is better, so the survival rate might be higher. But at least half of them will be eliminated. Huyen Aanu smiled evilly. He didn't seem to care. Hearing this, everyone's heart tightened. The elimination rate was as high as 90%. They couldn't imagine how harsh the battle was to achieve such a terrifying elimination rate. These people were not trash. On the contrary, without exception, all of them were the best of the Paong realm. They were the top figures of the myths, but they were eliminated like trash. One could imagine how terrible it was. Everyone encouraged themselves in their hearts. They must stay within the top 1,000. Otherwise, they would be eliminated as soon as they arrived. How would they have the face to see others in the future? So, you must work hard with fear and shame in your hearts. Practice well and climb up bit by bit like a dog. Sooner or later, you will be able to climb up. Huyen Aanu sneered and said. Everyone's faces were red with anger, but no one dared to make a move. This Huyen Aanu was not ordinary. Don't look down on us. We will amaze the world with a single brilliant feat. Amidst the silence and tension, Yi Shiwen slowly said, Ha 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 ha, good, well said. Huyen Aanu laughed and said, You must have such a mentality. What kind of people do you think we are selecting here? Was it trash? No, we are selecting the elites of the elites, the geniuses of the geniuses. Those who can enter this door are not mediocre, but it's useless. Those who can stay will have a future. Alright, next, I'll bring you into the Transforming God Tower. This is your benefit. This is the first benefit you've had since coming to the Transforming God Abyss, and for some people, it may be the last. You must cherish it, Huyen Aanu said, and then directly led everyone into the Transforming God Tower. He came to the front of the Divine Transformation Tower, then pinched a hand seal, and the Divine Transformation Tower slowly opened the 100-meter-tall door on the spot. Suddenly, a boundless aura of the Great Tao rushed out, and everyone could clearly feel that the surrounding Great Tao had suddenly become within reach. It was not inferior to the scene outside, where the laws were almost manifested. Almost with every breath, he could absorb the Great Tao into his body, faintly forming a shocking transformation. Everyone's face revealed a somewhat horrified look. This Transforming God Tower was very powerful. In the outside world, such a place was simply unimaginable. They walked all the way in. It was an extremely spacious hall that was thousands of square meters large. It was very spacious, and the sound of everyone's footsteps echoed throughout the hall. In front of everyone, there were 100 doors leading to an unknown distance. From afar, these doors seemed to have been passed down from ancient times. They were engraved with unimaginable patterns and the lines of the Great Tao. Just by looking at them from afar, one could feel a kind of enlightenment flowing in one's heart. Everyone held their breath and looked at Huyen Aanu. Huyen Aanu didn't disappoint everyone's expectations and said, Do you see these 100 doors? These 100 doors represent 100 incomparably powerful inheritances. Each inheritance is very amazing. There are even earth-shattering martial arts as well as experiences and insights left behind by predecessors. Different doors represent different fortuitous encounters. You all can choose one of the doors and meditate for a full 7 days. This is a benefit only available to newcomers. If I wanted to go in, I would have to use points to exchange for time. It's far from being as good as you all. 100 kinds of inheritances. Everyone's heart suddenly became excited. As Pawang experts, it wasn't strange for them to have 1 or 2 deity-level martial arts inheritances. However, it didn't mean that they wouldn't care about the opportunity to obtain 1 or 2 inheritances. Not to mention, this might be an inheritance left behind by a deity. Huyen Aanu began to ask, however, you have to think about it carefully. Behind each gate is an inheritance, and at the same time, it also represents a faction. Behind each of these 100 gates is something left behind by a deity, and they can be roughly divided into 7 branches. Once you enter, you will never be able to betray your faction for the rest of your life. Everyone understood that this was the time to choose a side. Even in the Hidden Valley, it was very obvious that there were many factions. Not all of them were the same. Once you chose a branch, you wouldn't have the opportunity to learn the martial arts of the other branches. Moreover, they didn't say it directly. Instead, after choosing, they naturally added a branch to the list, adding a bit of randomness. Perhaps this was the tacit understanding between the major branches. Everyone had no way of knowing. You are free to choose. Once you have chosen, you can't give up. Huyen Aanu said. Look at it yourselves first. I will give you an hour to think about it. The next 7 days will be spent in enlightenment. This will be the biggest opportunity for you to change your life. After saying that, Huyen Aanu no longer spoke. She just coldly looked at everyone with her arms crossed. It seemed that she didn't want to interfere in their choice. Everyone immediately stepped forward and went to look at the 100 doors. The imprint of the Great Path engraved on each door was completely different. It also represented a different emphasis and direction. Yi Shiwen also stepped forward and looked at each door. On each door, he could more or less see what was inside. Each door was very mysterious. It was unknown how many tens of thousands of years they had existed. There was a sense of vicissitudes everywhere. However, the Great Path engraved on each door was completely different. After looking at all of them, he felt that his horizons had been broadened. Almost all the great paths were engraved on these 100 doors. It was as if everything could be found inside. It was very rare and all-encompassing. Some were like magical martial arts, and some were like the experience and perception of the Great Path. As Huyen Aanu said, although there were a total of 100 doors in general, he could feel that among these 100 kinds of inheritances, there were faintly 7 kinds, divided into 7 categories. Each category had its own specialty. They were all different and couldn't be generalized. He narrowed his eyes and didn't choose directly. Instead, he sat down cross-legged, closed his eyes, and began to comprehend. Suddenly, he felt that hundreds of great paths suddenly covered the sky and covered the earth. Each of them had great power. He directly released his own great path and began to resonate with these hundreds of great paths. He couldn't make a complete choice, so he simply chose the great path that resonated with him the most. After seeing Yi Shiwen do this, Huyen Aanu's eyes suddenly lit up. She was quite surprised. Yi Shiwen was almost self-taught and understood how to do this. Many old people who came here 2 or 3 times didn't discover this mystery, but Yi Shiwen was actually able to discover this secret right after coming here. Moreover, he wasn't dazzled by the hundreds of inheritances. This was already very difficult. One must know that everyone's energy was limited, and this contained over 100 extremely powerful inheritances. If one could delve deeply into each and every one of them, they would be able to cultivate to a world-shaking level, invincible and unstoppable. Everyone was completely different, so it was impossible for every one of these hundreds of great paths to be suitable for oneself. Being dazzled or one-sidedly choosing the great path that seemed to be the most powerful would be a waste of time. It would be a waste of a great opportunity. After Yi Shiwen, the young man with a sword on his back, the golden-haired monkey, and the blue-eyed golden-eyed toad also sat down cross-legged. They used their own comprehensions of the great path and began to collide with the hundreds of great paths. They wanted to find an existence that could resonate with their own great path. After all, their comprehension was a notch higher than everyone else's. So, they quickly understood after seeing Yi Shiwen's actions. With these people taking the lead, some of the people who were dazzled by the selection immediately came back to their senses. They sat cross-legged and mobilized their own martial arts comprehension to collide with the great Tao. For a time, the entire hall was filled with turbulence. Although there seemed to be nothing on the surface, after Huyen Aanu opened her magic eyes, she could clearly see that everyone's great paths were colliding with each other. It was as if they were swimming in an ocean of great paths. They were like fireflies in the dark night, unusually dazzling. Among these people, the young man with a sword on his back, the golden-haired monkey, and the green-jade-eyed toad clearly had higher cultivations than everyone else. They were far ahead of everyone else, and it seemed that they would soon find a suitable Tao for themselves. But what really surprised him was Yi Shiwen. He was sitting cross-legged, motionless, like a Buddha. Yi Shiwen's cultivation was only at the 6th level of Paong realm, but his comprehension of the Great Way was actually a notch higher than that of the swordsman and the other two, who were at the 8th level of Paong realm. Moreover, he was far ahead of them. This discovery made him open his eyes wide. Chapter 2150. The strength that a person could display naturally had a lot to do with his martial arts realm. Most people could only slightly exceed the level of strength that they possessed. Some people's growth in strength had already reached the limit of the martial arts realm, so their cultivation stagnated. The realm was like a water tank, and strength was the water. The size of the water tank determined the amount of water that could be stored. The water tank that an ordinary person possessed was almost the same as their own water. Take the sword-carrying youth and the others, for example. Although their strength was outstanding, it was nothing compared to their own martial arts realm. Therefore, in his eyes, although he thought highly of them, it was nothing. However, Yi Shiwen was completely different. He was only at the 6th level of the Paong realm, but his martial arts realm comprehension had far exceeded the level of the 6th level of the Paong realm. It had even faintly reached the level of the 9th level of the Paong realm, which was a level higher than that of the sword-carrying youth and the others. This was what really shocked him. What kind of fortuitous encounter did a guy at the 6th level of the Paong realm have to go through to have the comprehension of the 9th level of the Paong realm? This was not something that could be obtained by ordinary fortuitous encounters. Even he could not achieve such a level unless he could personally experience this realm. However, he did not know that Yi Shiwen had used various means to erupt the strength of an expert at the peak of the mythical realm several times. Coupled with the existence of the mysterious space, his realm comprehension had always far exceeded his true strength. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for him to erupt the strength of an expert at the 8th level of the Paong realm, while he was only at the 6th level of the Paong realm. Easily taking care of 2 experts at the 7th and 8th heavens of the Paong realm, leaving them unable to fight back, this in itself was not something that an ordinary person could do. It was already amazing for an ordinary person to contend with a peak of the mythical realm with the help of a high-quality pseudo-divine weapon. How could it be like Yi Shiwen, who had continuously killed experts at the peak of the mythical realm during this period of time? Even the leader of the Divine Union, the Heaven Wasteland Temple Master, who was at the peak of the mythical realm and an invincible expert among the invincible. This was proof that his martial arts realm was far beyond the imagination of ordinary people. Usually, he didn't show it, but at this time, it was undoubtedly revealed. This is interesting. With such a deep foundation in martial arts, his cultivation speed will not be slow. Maybe we will see him become active soon. Huyen Aanu narrowed her eyes and smiled. The corner of her mouth raised into an unconcealable smile. At this time, everyone had entered a white-hot stage. Their respective great paths were colliding. It was as if they had entered an ocean of great paths, searching for the inheritance that resonated with them the most. Taking advantage of this opportunity, everyone could feel their cultivation growing rapidly. They did not dare to imagine what it would be like if they entered secluded cultivation. Yi Shiwen closed his eyes and meditated. He collided with the great Tao one by one, feeling it with his heart. As the saying goes, it's not the best that suits you the most. On the contrary, it's the best that suits you the most. However, there was no conclusion as to what was the most suitable for him. He needed to use his own heart to judge, and there was nothing more direct than the resonance caused by the collision of the great Tao. Found it? After a series of collisions, he finally felt a martial arts inheritance that was the most suitable for him. In this short period of time, it was an eye-opener for him. These hundreds of inheritances were simply all-inclusive. It was far from being as simple as a random martial arts technique. It contained a complete inheritance. As Huyen Yanu said, any of the great Tao could allow people to directly cultivate to the Tao without much consideration. It was extraordinary. If any one of them spread out, it would cause countless experts to fight over it. It was rare to see one. Once the martial arts he was looking for was determined, the inheritance of that martial arts would immediately become incomparably large, and other martial arts would quickly retreat. This was a Saber Tao inheritance, the Broken World Saber. This was the inheritance of a powerful saber technique, tyrannical and unparalleled. From the information of the inheritance, it was not a supreme being of the human race, but a blade technique passed down by a god of a foreign race. When this blade technique was cultivated to the extreme, a single slash would be able to shatter a world. Its might was extremely terrifying. This saber technique faintly resonated with the saber Tao in his body, which was on the verge of bursting out at his command. He had condensed the fist Tao incarnation and the sword Tao incarnation. His next step was to condense the third incarnation, the saber Tao incarnation. It was just that he did not have a suitable body to reside in until now. Now, the appearance of the Broken World Saber completely filled this loophole. Condensing the saber Tao incarnation was just around the corner. Once he condensed the saber Tao incarnation, his strength would most likely go a step further and become tyrannical to an unparalleled level. Although the Broken World Saber was not the most tyrannical among these hundreds of inheritances, he could feel that there were several more tyrannical inheritances that were faintly superior to the many great Tao. However, he did not choose any of them. The most suitable for him was the best. In terms of inheritance, with Yi Mo's guidance, it was almost equivalent to having the Demon King's inheritance. He was not bad. Now, he had to walk a path that belonged to himself. However, he was not in a hurry to open his eyes and exit this state. This was a rare opportunity. After choosing, there would no longer be an opportunity to collide with hundreds of great Tao at the same time. Moreover, these great Tao were extraordinary. Each of them was a great Tao that only deities could comprehend. It was far beyond the imagination of ordinary people. When the time to choose was up, everyone exited the state of enlightenment one after another. Their faces were full of joy. Obviously, the gains this time were far beyond their initial expectations. This was just the beginning. If they waited for 7 days to cultivate, there would definitely be another rebirth. Huyen Eanu looked at these people and said, "You people are said to have superior qualifications. Not bad. You are much better than those stupid guys before." Just when everyone was still wondering what he was talking about, he said, "Since you've already made your choice, then hurry up and comprehend it. It's rare to have 7 days, and then it'll be half a year later. I hope that fewer of you will be eliminated. See you then." However, he directly pinched a seal. Everyone suddenly felt a suction force coming from above. Then, they were sucked into the door of the great Tao that they had chosen. This time, the newcomers are a bit interesting. However, it is hard to say how many will be left. Huyen Aana said faintly, "Let's go and receive this time's reward. This kind of thing doesn't happen often. How can such a thing with such a generous reward only happen once?" After saying that, his whole person disappeared from the transforming God Tower. Yi Shiwen was sucked into the door of the broken world blade on the spot. It was an incomparably huge space. The entire space was filled with endless saber auras. Endless saber auras were crisscrossing. Each saber aura contained the energy to destroy the world. They were constantly shuttling in the sky, chopping down, and tearing the void open every time. They would shatter everything. Even if it was far away, Yi Shiwen could still feel the powerful saber aura. It directly cut his body, causing him pain. This was a god-level martial technique that had been created by a deity. Yi Shiwen immediately confirmed that he had learned many god-level martial techniques. So, it wasn't strange at all. He had even mastered powerful martial techniques of the emperor level. Without hesitation, he immediately sat down cross-legged and used his spiritual force to sense the saber chi. In his mind, countless pieces of information regarding the world-shattering saber had already been imprinted in his mind the moment it had been transmitted. This was an extremely obscure saber technique. Its power was also extraordinary. It was divided into a total of 3 levels. If one could practice the first level, it could almost be said that under the deity level, there was almost no existence that could not be seriously injured. For this world breaker blade, it was just the beginning. Once it was practiced to the second level, it would truly be a step into the next level. It would not be a problem to destroy a world with one slash. And when it was practiced to the third level, that is, when this saber technique was practiced to the great perfection realm, it could easily destroy a world. Even all the great Tao laws would be smashed and turned into ashes. This kind of power was enough to make people's hearts tremble. Although a confrontation between legendary experts could cause a small world to collapse, it was a fierce confrontation that could only be possible after countless exchanges. However, once the cultivation of the World Breaker Blade was completed, it could be done almost with one slash. It was not a matter of the same level. In layman's terms, it was equivalent to the sum of dozens of attacks of a legendary expert, all condensed together. This saber technique was infinitely powerful. It was naturally difficult to learn. It was different from the ordinary saber Tao laws. It contained the fragmentation laws. With the support and effect of the fragmentation laws, it was possible to instantly shatter a world. This was something that could only be done by borrowing the power of heaven and earth. Otherwise, it was impossible to fight against the entire world with a mere human strength. Even if it was just a small world, the power contained was far beyond that of a legendary expert. So, to learn the World Breaker Blade, in the final analysis, it was necessary to have a fundamental understanding of the fragmentation laws. This was the essential difference between different martial arts. Even if they were both saber techniques, the laws contained in them were different. The power and form displayed were also worlds apart. It was impossible to generalize them. However, he did not need to master all the saber Tao. As long as he mastered this saber technique, his saber Tao incarnation would almost be a done deal. 7 days was very precious. He did not want to waste a single second. He immediately entered the state of comprehension. Chapter 2151. Yi Shiwen's divine sense directly probed out and penetrated into the saber aura. However, it was instantly strangled and crushed by the saber aura that filled the sky. These saber auras contained a powerful fragmented law. It was unimaginably powerful. Yi Shiwen was sure that this wasn't something that a master at the peak of the mythical realm could produce. It was probably left behind by the god who had left behind the inheritance to help the later generations comprehend it. Apart from the safe zone where Yi Shiwen was located, All the places were covered with these saber auras, forming a world of saber auras. Yi Shiwen sat cross-legged. The enlightening mind ancient tree in his body continued to absorb innumerable lingqi. It began to erupt with 5-colored divine light. One by one, it hung down and shrouded Yi Shiwen's mind. It made him calm down in an instant. His mood was no longer agitated. At the same time, the mysterious space in his body began to operate rapidly. Tens of millions of Xiandong were consumed rapidly. He began to comprehend the various subtleties of the broken world blade. The consumption was so huge that even he was stunned. This was worthy of being a god-level martial art. It was different from the previous ones. Whether it was the devil wings or the overturning the sky seal, although their grades weren't low, they were all cultivated little by little. Therefore, the consumption wasn't as shocking as it seemed. Because at this point, martial arts were no longer just martial arts. The key was that it also contained a variety of rules and laws. Therefore, it seemed to be the same martial arts. However, when fighting at the demigod level, it wasn't just using one's own strength. It had begun to use one's own comprehension of the laws to injure the enemy. If not, how could one break the world by relying on the power of the demigod? The power of any individual was limited. It couldn't be compared with the power of heaven and earth. It seemed that there wasn't much difference in the fighting style. However, the difference was too big. From using one's own strength to kill the enemy, to using the power of heaven and earth to fight against the enemy, and using the power of the laws to kill the enemy, there had been an essential transformation. Just like Yi Shiwen's devil wings. After cultivating to the second layer, it became the wind and thunder wings. His speed had doubled, but he didn't use much of his own strength. Most of the time, he used the speed of the laws of wind and thunder attributes to achieve such a level. This was the true direction that the future almighty beings should strive towards and where the great Tao lay. He had used the power of the laws to amplify the originally insignificant damage to a terrifying extent. It was the same for the world-shattering saber. Even if he borrowed the power of the emergence immortal exterminating saber, it would be wishful thinking to shatter a world with the saber aura that Yi Shiwen had released. However, it was completely different if he borrowed the power of the laws that originally existed in the world. The whole process was like nuclear fission. A series of fissions erupted with astonishing power. The profoundness of this saber technique lay in the shattering of laws. With the help of this saber chi, the shattering of laws was practically visible to the naked eye. Cultivating in the outside world would not be able to achieve such an effect. The mysterious space within his body also started to operate at a rapid speed. It began to help him comprehend the various profundities and subtleties of the breaking world blade. It unceasingly transformed into talismans and runes of the great Tao, and engraved them into his body. As a result, his understanding of the world-shattering saber started to deepen and improve rapidly. Although his spiritual will was constantly being crushed, he could also sense more of the principles of the great path contained in the world-shattering blade's saber chi while it was being crushed. At this time, all of it had been transformed into cultivation and speed of comprehension. Such consumption could be imagined. It was very huge. It didn't take long for the hundreds of millions of Xian pills to be consumed. Yi Shiwen secretly felt that this was not good. If this continued, the tens of billions of Xian pills that he originally had in storage would not be used for long. Yi Shiwen gritted his teeth and decided to use the God Source Origin directly. As he thought of this, a piece of God Source Origin directly flew out of Tianyuan Mirror under the guidance of his thoughts. It flew above his head and instantly erupted with a powerful torrent of energy, which directly blasted into Yi Shiwen's body. Even though it only passed through Yi Shiwen's body, Yi Shiwen could still feel that his body was receiving a huge baptism, which made his body experience a kind of transformation. With the strength of his body, ordinary power could no longer make any changes to him. However, this divine source origin was different. It contained the power of the gods. Along with this power, there were many comprehensions of the Great Path. All of them were wrapped in it and poured into Yi Shiwen's body. The information of the Great Path was also separated by the mysterious space. Then, it was directly injected into the depths of Yi Shiwen's divine soul. He immediately comprehended it. Yi Shiwen could feel that since he used this piece of divine source origin, his comprehension of the Great Path was improving at an even more amazing speed. Not only was the comprehension of the world-shattering blade improving, but even his own realm was also improving. Originally, he barely had some great path of the 9th level of Paong realm. Moreover, only a part of the great path of the Paong realm had reached the level of the 9th level of Paong realm. However, as the information of the great path in the divine source origin was structured and comprehended by him, he actually began to make up for what he originally lacked. He faintly had the intention of entering the 9th level of Paong realm. He was comprehending the great path and the world-shattering blade at the same time. It was impossible for others to do two things at the same time. However, for him, nothing was impossible. Moreover, the more great path he comprehended and the stronger his martial arts realm was, the faster he comprehended the world-shattering blade. It didn't affect him at all. 5 days passed by in this continuous comprehension. Originally, he was just barely able to reach the 9th level of Paong realm, but now he had finished writing it down. It could be said that he had steadily stepped into this level, and he did not have to worry about falling off at any time. His martial arts realm had undergone a shocking transformation in these 5 days. With the 9th level of Paong realm as a foundation, it was only a matter of time before he broke into the 7th level of Paong realm. From the middle stage of Paong realm to the late stage of Paong realm, he already had a real foundation. As long as he was willing, he could do closed-door training at any time. However, this wasn't his only gain. His real gain was a deeper understanding of the first level of the world-shattering blade. The 3 levels of the world-shattering blade corresponded to 3 essences: break, break, and shatter. Now, he was mainly comprehending the essence of the word break. The essence that could break everything. The sharpness was unparalleled and unstoppable. This was the true power of the world-shattering blade. He stood in this void. Not far from him was the sky full of saber aura. It constantly shuttled back and forth, slashing everything. Even a master at the peak of the myth realm wouldn't dare to intrude into it because they would be slashed into pieces. The vital essence in his body was constantly mobilized. Under the mobilization of the observing person scripture, his body turned into a universe that kept expanding. This vital essence circulated once in his body and was wrapped in endless divinity. Then, it quickly transformed into the unique saber chi of the world-shattering saber. Observing person scripture was inclusive of all things. All martial arts could be evolved without the slightest conflict. This was the fundamental reason why he could practice so many martial arts without exploding. Break! He roared. The saber aura of the world-shattering blade suddenly boiled in his body. It surged out of his hand, and then condensed into the shape of a long saber. He slashed it out. Boom! An astonishing saber chi slashed out thousands of feet in an instant. It swept across in an instant like a roaring dragon, shattering the void and crushing everything in its path. The void was cut into 2 halves. The first level of the world-shattering blade's profound meaning was vividly reflected in his hands. Bang! This saber aura fiercely hit another saber aura that originally existed in the void. It directly dissipated after the impact and no longer existed. However, Yi Shiwen's face revealed a somewhat surprised smile. For 5 days, he had borrowed this special space, and also used the divine source. He had finally mastered the first level of the world-shattering blade, and practiced it to the peak. He had one more trump card. It was far more than just the human Tao fist and the 3 seals in one. Bang! The piece of God's source above his head shattered and turned into nothingness. He had used up an entire piece of God's source in the past 5 days. One could imagine the difficulty of comprehending the world-shattering blade. If it was someone else, even if they had such favorable conditions, it would be impossible for them to master it in a short period of 5 days. Even if it was just the first level, it was already very shocking. There were still 2 days left before the end. He was not in a hurry to go out, nor did he continue to comprehend the second level of the world-shattering blade's profound meaning. The profound meaning of the first level was still too profound for him at present, and it also required a lot of time to comprehend. It was impossible to have any fundamental improvement in just 2 days. On the contrary, he turned his gaze directly to the saber aura that was constantly cruising in the void and tearing everything apart. His eyes were bursting with brilliance. These blade chis were extraordinary. They were not slashed out by an ordinary person. They were slashed out by a legendary god. That was why even after countless years, these blade chis did not show any signs of weakening. This was the true essence of a god, the eternal power. A crazy idea flashed in his mind. He actually wanted to capture these saber auras and subdue them. When the time comes when he really needed it, he could slash out with the blade. What kind of earth-shattering power would it have? Perhaps even the real gods would be seriously injured. Just thinking about it made him excited. Chapter 21:52. There was no doubt about the power of these blade auras. Even with his current strength, he would only be crushed if he were to enter it. There was no other possibility. This was the true power of these blade auras. It was almost equivalent to the power of a deity's all-out attack. If he could subdue it, it could be said that it would immediately become his greatest trump card. However, he knew that no matter what kind of enemy he faced, he would be able to seriously injure them, even if they were a deity. If he could possess such a blade aura, he would be able to kill the Divine Union's leader even if he were to encounter him right now. However, this was easy to say but very difficult to actually do. Once he got close to these blade auras, he would be instantly injured, let alone truly subduing them. This was simply impossible. If others knew about this, they would only think that he was crazy and would not believe the credibility of this matter. However, although this idea was crazy, once it was born, it quickly took root in his mind. This was a huge temptation, a temptation to keep his mouth shut. If he could use this saber chi for his own use, then there would be no place in the world that he could not go. Even if he had just one blade aura, he would be fearless and no one would be able to pose a threat to him. At the thought of this, he still didn't give up on this idea that might seem crazy to outsiders. However, it wasn't easy to actually achieve this idea. The mysterious space in his body was constantly revolving, calculating all kinds of possibilities. His mind was deducing one plan after another, but it was quickly overturned by himself, as he quickly calculated the loopholes in each of these plans. There wasn't much time left. There were only 2 days left in total. He wasted another day, but there wasn't the slightest bit of progress. He started to get a little anxious, and an anxious look appeared on his face. Suddenly, he spat out a mouthful of blood, his face flushed red. Is it really impossible? Impossible? I don't believe it. He had already spent 1 billion Xian pills to deduce the possibilities, yet there was still no possibility of success. There was a hint of madness in his eyes. This crazy idea had already taken root in his mind, and he could not get rid of it. The temptation of owning a divine blade chi was too great. It was so great that he could not resist it at all. Even if he had to pay a huge price, he had to deduce a feasible method. Inside his body, countless profound cores continued to burn, and a set of plans was deduced, only to be overturned again and again. More than half a day passed in this manner. There wasn't much time left until he finally opened his eyes. Ha ha ha, I've finally deduced the true pattern of this saber chi. There is a weakness in it. Yi Shiwen's eyes flashed with a crazy look. After more than a day of deduction, he finally figured out the weakness in the pattern of these saber chi, which gave him a chance of success in capturing it. His eyes were like torches, staring at one of the saber chi. In the past more than a day, he had deduced countless possibilities, but he failed every time. The result every time was that he would be killed on the spot. There was no other possibility. However, the heavens did not disappoint those who persevered. After continuous deduction, he finally found a feasible way. And that saber chi soon cruised in front of Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen suddenly opened his eyes. "Now, do it!" He shouted loudly, and suddenly, an amazing golden light burst out of his big hand. It rose against the wind, and suddenly grabbed towards the saber chi. Bang! In an instant, his big hand was directly shattered by this saber chi. It couldn't really cause any damage to this saber chi. This saber chi seemed to be an extremely powerful saber master. It couldn't tolerate the slightest challenge, and no one was allowed to provoke it. However, what Yi Shiwen wanted was this instant. In that instant, although Yi Shiwen's attack was shattered, at the same time, there was also a loophole in his movement. There was no way to integrate with the other saber chi. Even if it was only for that instant, it was enough for him. Emergence Immortal Exterminating Saber, it's up to you. A silver-white long saber suddenly appeared in Yi Shiwen's hand, and instantly shrouded the saber chi. As if it had opened its bloody mouth, it directly swallowed the saber chi on the spot. Bang! 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 As soon as this saber chi was swallowed, it immediately counterattacked violently. It was as if the saber chi had a spirit and automatically began to counterattack. This was also because the Emergence Immortal Exterminating Saber was extremely tyrannical. Otherwise, if it transformed into other martial instruments, it would probably be shattered by the saber chi on the spot. It was the same even if it was an ordinary pseudo-divine tool. However, this Emergence Immortal Exterminating Saber was different. It was far above ordinary pseudo-divine tools. Although Yi Shiwen had already erased the saber spirit, and its power was far from being comparable to its peak, the material of its body still hadn't changed. It was still very powerful. This saber chi struggled frantically, wanting to break free and return to the world of saber chi. It set off a boundless hurricane, and the saber chi hit Yi Shiwen in the face. It scratched Yi Shiwen's face painfully. His robe fluttered and his hair fluttered in the wind. "I'm going all out. Seal it for me. Listen to my command obediently." He roared and forcefully pinched a seal. In the void, a seal word formed on the spot. Then, it directly fell and blasted into the Emergence Immortal Exterminating Saber. Suddenly, this saber chi's resistance was suppressed by more than half. It was unable to erupt with the terrifying power at the beginning. "Suppress, suppress!" Yi Shiwen roared. Countless Xian cores began to burn and turned into a torrent of energy. It poured into his body and turned into his power. Then, it firmly suppressed this saber chi. His seal word was constantly perfected. The places that were damaged by the saber chi were also constantly repaired and suppressed by Yi Shiwen. After an unknown period of time, he finally suppressed this saber chi and suppressed this saber chi within the Emergence Immortal Exterminating Saber. He finally breathed a sigh of relief. This time, it seemed to be a daunting experience without any mishaps. However, how could an outsider know the dangers involved? He had done enough preparation and homework previously. Just the deduction alone had been carried out countless times. Even he himself wasn't sure. At one point, he even thought that it was impossible to succeed at all. He even had the thought of giving up. Not to mention, even if he managed to deduce the slightest chance of success, he could not afford to make the slightest mistake in his operation. If he made the slightest mistake, he would be devoured by the blade aura and die without a burial place. It could be said that he could not afford to make the slightest mistake. This was the most advanced aspect of this time. There was a method, but the probability of success was less than 1%. If it weren't for the Mingxin ancient tree that suppressed his mind and allowed him to judge calmly like a robot, even if there was such a method, he wouldn't dare to try it easily. After Yi Shiwen pulled away the saber chi, the entire world of saber chi shook. They were originally operating according to a special law. All of a sudden, one of the links was pulled away, and it quickly affected the other saber chi. However, such an impact only lasted for a moment. Soon, it returned to normal. It seemed to be a self-repairing law. He couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. The risk this time was worth it. With this trump card, he would be able to protect himself even if he were to face the gods. Although it was only for a moment, it was enough. However, before he could think too much, he felt that there was another huge suction in the void, and he was sent out. When he opened his eyes again, he was already inside the divine transformation tower. The surrounding people were sent out almost at the same time. Everyone had different expressions, but it was obvious that compared with when they just entered, there was an amazing improvement. Yi Shiwen had gained a lot in these 7 days, but he was far from the only one who had gained a lot. Among these people, the golden-haired monkey, the young man with a sword on his back, and the green-eyed toad had gained the most. Their auras were clearly different from before. It was obvious that they had also gained great benefits from this comprehension. Your name is Yi Shiwen, right? Let me ask you, which inheritance did you choose? The golden-haired monkey directly stepped forward and said with a smile, "Let me introduce myself first. My name is Sun Qingtian, and I chose the spherical sky rod." I didn't expect to see such a brilliant rod technique here. Although he was a little unaccustomed to the monkey's familiarity, he could also see that the monkey had no malicious intentions. He immediately said, "I chose the world-shattering blade." This itself was not a secret, and it was not a big deal. It was fine to say it. You chose that set of blade technique. That set of blade technique is quite overbearing, but I see that you should have gained a lot from it. If there is a chance in the future we can learn from each other," the monkey said with a chuckle. He had also seen this set of blade technique in the collision of the Great Path before, so he was not completely ignorant. "Your name is Yi Shiwen. How about it? Do you dare to fight with me?" The blue-eyed golden toad stepped forward and said. There was a hint of provocation and displeasure in his eyes. Previously, Yi Shiwen had been in the limelight, and this arrogant toad was already extremely displeased. Chapter 2153. It was just that with Huyen Aona's suppression, even he had to restrain his temper, but his heart was even more unhappy. Yi Shiwen was indeed very strong, but he was not bad either. Not to mention, in these 7 days, he had also gained a lot. At this time, his self-confidence was bursting. The psychological shadow that Yi Shiwen had caused him a few days ago had long been forgotten. His words immediately attracted everyone's attention. Everyone had gained something and felt that a breakthrough was in front of them. They were full of confidence, but among these people, Yi Shiwen was the strongest. And when the conflict between the blue-eyed golden-eyed toad and Yi Shiwen broke out, they could also watch from the side and see how big the gap was now. The current gap did not mean that there would be such a gap for a lifetime. One day they would be able to catch up. Yi Shiwen just glanced at the blue-eyed golden-eyed toad, then slowly said, "You are not my opponent, there is no need to try." "What?" Blue-eyed golden-eyed toad never dreamed that Yi Shiwen would actually say such words. Yi Shiwen simply did not put him in his eyes at all. He did not take him seriously at all. Yi Shiwen had always said such words to others. No one had ever said such words to him, not to mention that Yi Shiwen was only at the 6th level of Paong realm, which was far worse than him. Arrogant and conceited, He squeezed out these words from his teeth, simply hating Yi Shiwen. I am just telling the truth, Yi Shiwen said lightly. Ha ha, what a good telling the truth. The monkey laughed and said. This blue-eyed golden-eyed toad was very ambitious. From the beginning, he wanted to group them together and then become the leader. He had long been displeased with him, and now that he saw him being defeated, he naturally clapped and applauded. The blue-eyed golden-eyed toad glared at him angrily. He was extremely unhappy, but he knew that this monkey was not simple either. He could not be enemies with two people at the same time. Although he was arrogant, he was not stupid. Cut the crap, do you dare to fight with me? When the blue-eyed golden-eyed toad spoke, his eyes were fixed on Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen's heart was very clear. How could he not know that this blue-eyed golden-eyed toad had not given up on his idea of becoming the leader of this group of people? In order to become a leader, the best way was to establish one's prestige and virtue, and he had obviously become the target of his prestige. He couldn't help but sneer in his heart. If he really thought that he was a pushover, then he was gravely mistaken. Since you want to humiliate yourself, then I will fulfill your wish, Yi Shiwen said. Then come at me. Let me see how strong you really are. The blue-eyed golden toad was already furious. Eat my palm first. The blue-eyed golden toad instantly attacked. He directly slapped the air with his palm, flattening the space and turning everything into nothingness. The power of this palm could be seen. He was determined to fight to the death, not giving Yi Shiwen any chance to breathe. If you only have these insignificant skills, then don't boast. Yi Shiwen snorted again and again. He was not a good-tempered person. This blue-eyed golden toad obviously did not come with good intentions, so he naturally would not give it a good look. He waved his big hand and turned it into a big golden hand that instantly absorbed the power of this palm. It was effortless, without the slightest bit of difficulty. Although his strength did not increase in the past 7 days, he had steadily stepped into the 9th heaven of the Paong realm. This allowed him to control his strength to an astonishing degree. It was almost effortless for him to destroy all of the blue-eyed golden-eyed toad's attack. You have some ability, but let's see what happens next. The blue-eyed golden-eyed toad bellowed, its aura surging to the sky. Behind it, countless poisonous gas surged up and spewed out like raging flames. He was like a god, controlling the surrounding space and comprehending the true meaning of the Great Way. He looked down at Yi Shiwen as if he could control the operation of the sun and moon. Everyone could not help but marvel in their hearts. Strong, very strong. Although this blue-eyed golden-eyed toad was arrogant and wanted to rule everyone, when it came to strength, it was indeed capable. Without exception, everyone had the same thought, unrivaled. With a casual move, the mountains collapsed and the earth cracked. With a wave of his hand, a poisonous gas filled the air. This was no longer poisonous gas, but the law of poison that destroyed everything. He spread out his 5 fingers and directly slapped down. There were countless laws of poison on each finger, representing different poisonous gas. There were hundreds of millions of law talismans condensed on it, and it had the power to destroy the heavens. It directly blocked all of Yi Shiwen's escape routes, leaving him nowhere to retreat and nowhere to escape. Yi Shiwen stood still and did not even look at it. He said, I said, you are not my opponent. You don't believe me? Then I will let you see now how big the gap between you and me is. You were not my opponent in the first place, and now it is even more impossible for you to be my opponent. Whoosh! Yi Shiwen finally moved. Countless saber lights burst out from his body and directly swept into a long dragon. Countless saber laws manifested in it, and instantly slashed towards the palm full of poisonous gas. After he cultivated the World Breaker Blade, his saber cultivation had greatly improved. It was not the same as before. With a raise of his hand and a lift of his foot, he broke the palm completely. What a powerful saber technique! The blue-eyed golden-eyed toad was shocked and quickly stretched out his hand. Just now, the saber light had faintly penetrated the miasma on his body, and he could feel the sharpness in his hand. If he had not retreated in time, he would have suffered a loss. He retreated again and again. The miasma barrier built around his body had already collapsed completely. It could not defend at all. It was destroyed by Yi Shiwen as soon as he came up, and he suffered a small loss. Yi Shiwen was merciless. He took a step forward and instantly rushed in front of the blue-eyed golden-eyed toad. A long saber condensed in his hand, and he slashed out suddenly. The saber aura swept out thousands of feet, directly piercing through the sky and earth, and fiercely slammed down on the blue-eyed golden-eyed toad. Yi Shiwen's countless saber auras interweaved and formed a long river that swept in all directions. It was invincible. As soon as he made his move, he vividly and thoroughly reflected his cultivation in Saber Dao during this period of time. He originally had an extremely strong foundation in Saber Dao. Although he did not condense into a Saber Dao incarnation, he was not far from it. With the completion of the first level of the World Breaker Blade, his understanding of Saber Dao had even more earth-shaking changes. In the face of Yi Shiwen's aggressiveness, the blue-eyed golden-eyed toad was completely enraged. He roared and said, "It turns out that you have some understanding of Saber Dao. No wonder you are so arrogant." He wasn't a benevolent person. He had been caught off guard by Yi Shiwen, and had suffered a small loss. However, he was far from being at the end of the line. He roared, and his entire body faintly changed back to its original form. His entire body had turned dark green, and he looked like a monster. His eyes turned into turquoise pupils, and his golden pupils represented his understanding of Poison Dao. Boom! In his eyes, countless poisonous rays burst out. Compared to the poisonous gas that was casually released just now, it was not known how many times more tyrannical. This was his core power and also his true strength. The strength of the peak of the 8th level of Paong Realm was finally fully released at this moment. The two sides collided fiercely in the void, forming a monstrous wave of air, sweeping out in circles. The blue-eyed golden-eyed toad, who had burst out with all his strength, was like a demon god, and did not want to let Yi Shiwen go. He took a step forward on the spot and chased after Yi Shiwen. "To be able to force me into this form, you are also amazing, but this is the end," the blue-eyed golden-eyed toad said proudly. Everyone retreated, very afraid of the poisonous gas of the blue-eyed golden-eyed toad. This blue-eyed golden-eyed toad has actually cultivated to this level. This kind of poisonous gas, I am afraid it can really poison a world. Rumor has it that there is no place on the body of the blue-eyed golden-eyed toad that does not have poisonous gas. If you come into contact with it, you may be poisoned to death. In addition to his gains in the past 7 days, I am afraid it has reached an incredible level. Everyone was afraid of being contaminated by the poisonous gas, and did not dare to approach at all. Even the sword-carrying youth and the monkey were no exception. Although they had their own ways to defend themselves, if it was not necessary, they did not want to be contaminated by such troublesome poisonous gas. "It's just this state, I want to see you return to your original form." Yi Shiwen was not afraid at all. When the poisonous gas touched Yi Shiwen's body, it could only make a continuous sizzling sound, and could not penetrate the defense of Yi Shiwen's body. Everyone was extremely surprised. It was like this from the beginning. Yi Shiwen did not have any reaction to the strongest part of the blue-eyed golden-eyed toad. He was not afraid at all. What kind of physique is this? Is there such a physique in the human race that is completely unafraid of poison? Or did he inherit some bloodline? Everyone was talking about it. The eyes of the blue-eyed golden-eyed toad flashed slightly with an amazing killing intent. An invisible force from all directions condensed towards its body. At this moment it was like a real god. Boundless poison techniques were released around its body, and countless poison Tao laws manifested. Around its body, a world of poison Tao was formed, and inside, there were countless poison Tao longevity world. Its power was getting stronger and stronger as the poisonous gas increased. For others, it was a fatal poisonous gas, but for him, it was a great tonic. His body also condensed a layer of miasma, protecting him in it. Boom! The blue-eyed golden-eyed toad attacked again, and this condensed boundless poisonous gas directly turned into a shocking torrent on the spot and directly blasted towards Yi Shiwen. It seems that you really do not give up until you see the Yellow River, and will not shed tears until you see the coffin. In that case, I will finish you, one move. Chapter 2154. It seems that you really won't give up until you see the Yellow River, and won't shed tears until you see the coffin. In that case, I will finish you off in one move. Yi Shiwen took a deep breath and shouted. His voice swept out like a wave, setting off endless waves of air. In the face of the blue-eyed golden toad, who directly blasted out endless poisonous gas, Yi Shiwen immediately attacked. His feet stepped in all directions, and suddenly, his saber directly shattered everything, like a blade of lightning, tearing the sky apart. It was extremely terrifying. Watch carefully, I will defeat you in one move. Yi Shiwen shouted, and endless divinity condensed, and then released. The light was bright, and a shocking saber aura directly condensed, turning into a shocking long saber, as if it could cut through the world, and cut through the river of time. Everything, cut it all for me. In his saber aura, there was supreme power, as if it was a powerful force that could cut through the world. What kind of saber technique is this? The blue-eyed golden toad felt a shocking threat, and he wanted to retreat, but Yi Shiwen did not give him such a chance at all. His whole body was like an eagle, and his long saber was invincible. Under the crushing of that terrible saber aura, all the poisonous gas defense on his body exploded, shattering into countless pieces. How can there be such a powerful saber technique? He kept retreating, simply afraid. The pressure formed by that terrible saber aura seemed to be able to cut through everything. Compared to the previous saber technique, this saber technique was simply superior to any saber technique he had shown before. The blue-eyed golden toad opened its mouth and roared, spewing out endless poisonous gas. It slammed its palm down on Yi Shiwen, piercing through the entire void. The poisonous gas in its hand corroded the void. Boom! The two sides collided, and the saber aura and poisonous gas fiercely collided in the void, bursting out endless dazzling light, directly covering the color of the world. The poisonous gas and the saber aura constantly devoured each other, and Fairy whose attack shattered the space in all directions. Boom! Yi Shiwen's saber aura was a notch higher, directly cutting through the poisonous gas that filled the sky, and then suddenly fell on the body of the blue-eyed golden toad. Pooh! He spat out a mouthful of blood, and his whole body flew out on the spot. Although the saber chi had been weakened by the poisonous gas, the part that directly slashed on his body still severely injured him in an instant. He didn't even have time to react and couldn't resist at all. He went out and directly crashed into the pagoda. He barely managed to stop and tumbled down. Blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. His entire face was abnormally ugly. Although he wasn't killed by Yi Shiwen on the spot, he was actually not far from it. He knew very well that if Yi Shiwen hadn't held back just now, he would have been killed in a normal battle outside. How could a proud and arrogant person like him accept this fact? However, it was an undeniable fact that he had been defeated by Yi Shiwen. Moreover, he had been defeated miserably by Yi Shiwen. Everyone was stunned by Yi Shiwen's blade. Even the blue-eyed golden toad ended up in such a state, so the others might not be able to survive either. Especially the young man with the sword on his back and the golden-haired monkey, their expressions were even more serious. Yi Shiwen, I lost this time, but next time, I will definitely beat you, the blue-eyed golden toad said unwillingly. He didn't expect that in the past 7 days. He thought that he had made great progress. Who would have thought that the gap between him and Yi Shiwen was even wider? Originally, he thought that Yi Shiwen was definitely not his opponent, but the fact was that he was not his opponent. This fact was really too cruel. Let's talk about it next time. Yi Shiwen's attitude of not even looking at him made him feel like he was holding back his anger. He was so depressed that he wanted to spit out a few more mouthfuls of blood. For these people who had just arrived at Deification Abyss, this battle was just the beginning. Soon, after everyone came out, an old man broke the void and walked in. He glanced at the blue-eyed golden toad that had fallen to the ground and said, "Oh? From the looks of it, they had already exchanged blows? Not bad. After entering Deification Abyss, you can only fight, and fight." Everyone's expression became dignified. Seeing that the old man didn't blame them, they all breathed a sigh of relief. From Huyen Ayana's body, they could see that this Deification Abyss was really full of experts. Any random person who came out might not be a big shot. Before they had complete confidence, it was best to tuck their tails between their legs. Although they were not used to it, it was not impossible. One must know that they were not born so strong. It was just that as they slowly became stronger, they also became more arrogant and domineering, looking down on others. Blue-eyed golden toad? It's an ancient species. Unfortunately, it didn't fully release its potential, but it doesn't matter. You will be fine in Deification Abyss. How about it, can you still leave? The old man glanced at the blue-eyed golden toad that had fallen to the ground and said, "I can." The blue-eyed golden toad forcibly climbed up from the ground, then glanced at the old man and said, "All right, all of you, come with me." The old man casually tore the void and immediately tore a huge crack in the void. It was a passage to the outside world. Then, under his lead, everyone went out one after another. However, contrary to what everyone had expected, after they exited, they did not arrive outside the Divine Transformation Tower. Instead, they arrived at a completely new place. It was an incomparably huge continent. The main road was filled with endless mountain peaks, and countless mountains rose from the ground. "May I ask, Senior, where is this place?" Yi Shiwen was the first to come out and asked. "This place will be your dojo from now on," the old man explained. "You will all live here in the future. This place has already been remodeled. Every mountain is a dojo and there are formations set up inside. There are all kinds of resources that you will need for cultivation. In short, all you need to do is cultivate well and compete to be the strongest." Everyone was a little uncomfortable. After all, their dojo outside was easily a planet or a world. Such a small mountain made it difficult for them to adapt. "What, you're not happy? Do you think it's easy to set up a dojo here?" The old man said, "How many people beg for a dojo like this? Even Tao-confirming powerhouses don't have this opportunity." Everyone was stunned and gasped. Even Tao-confirming deities wanted to enter this place? So, in the future, you will know how difficult it is to have a dojo here. You are lucky to have caught up with this plan. Under normal circumstances, even Tao-confirming deities can live here for a long time. The Deification Abyss not only means to transform into a deity, but also means that even deities can evolve. The old man said, "Once you are eliminated, you don't know how long it will take for you to come back. So, work hard." The old man said, "Once you are eliminated, you don't know how long it will take for you to come back, so work hard." In previous years, more than 90% of the people were eliminated, so I hope you will be better. However, you are newcomers, so you still have some preferential treatment. For the first 3 times, even if you are outside the top 1,000, you will not be expelled. However, after the 3rd time, if you can't squeeze into the top 1,000, you will be immediately eliminated. There is no other possibility. Everyone was silent. They had heard about this matter from Huyen Yanu before. In other words, they would have 2 years before the 4th competition. They would be able to live here and cultivate. This was a terrifying elimination rate. Although it was very unfair to them, even if they had cultivated here for 2 years, how could they be compared to the seniors who had cultivated here for more than 10 years, more than 20 years, or even more than 100 years? However, there was no fairness in this plan. They didn't want mediocre people. They only wanted geniuses, geniuses among geniuses. Once their performance was not up to standard, they would inevitably be eliminated. If they were outstanding enough, they would naturally be able to catch up with those top geniuses. Dare I ask, Senior, as long as I can squeeze into the top 1,000, can I cultivate here forever? Yi Shiwen asked a question that was on everyone's mind. If they could cultivate here forever, then wouldn't they have endless possibilities to prove their Tao? This is naturally impossible. The resources here are not easy to obtain. We only want geniuses, top geniuses. So, it is very simple. The maximum number of years you can cultivate here is only 100 years. Within 100 years, if you can prove your Tao, then you can go to the 2nd region. If you can't, then naturally you will have to abdicate and give way. The old man said. 100 years. This number fiercely hit everyone's heart. A trifling 100 years might just be a snap of the fingers. It might just be the time of a nap, but they were asking to prove their Tao. If they couldn't, then they would be kicked out. What kind of plan was this? Were they choosing geniuses? Or monstrous geniuses? Monsters? Originally, in their own plans, it would be considered smooth if they could prove their Tao within a few thousand years. But now, this plan of thousands or even tens of thousands of years had to be compressed into a short 100 years. In 100 years, they would have to walk the path of thousands or tens of thousands of years. If they couldn't complete it, then they would be thrown out of the deity transformation abyss like garbage. They would become the most shameful loser in everyone's eyes. However, that is still too far away for you guys. Almost no one can guarantee that they will be able to stay here for 100 years. You newcomers should first pass the first round and not be eliminated. The old man said with a faint smile. Chapter 2155. Everyone immediately became gloomy. Yes, it was hard to say if they could succeed in the first round. The elimination rate of more than 90% in the past was like a sharp sword floating above their heads, ready to chop down at any time. Since such a rule has been set, it means that someone must be able to do it. There's no reason why others can do it, but I can't. I will definitely be able to do it. At first, Yi Shiwen was also shocked by the requirement of achieving Tao validation in 100 years. Achieving Tao validation in 100 years? Such a requirement would probably scare people to death in the outside world. In the Xian world, even achieving Tao validation was a legend, not to mention achieving Tao validation in a mere 100 years. As expected of the forces behind the nameless Tao College. The only thing he was still worried about was that Jun Dingtian was also here. Why hadn't he seen him yet? Thinking of this, he couldn't help but step forward and say, "Senior, may I ask if you have already recruited a group of people?" The old man looked at Yi Shiwen and said, "Well, that's right, we have indeed recruited a group of people. Now they are in the final stage, and it won't be long before they decide whether to stay or leave." "It's been so long, and I still don't know your name, Senior?" Yi Shiwen continued to ask. After going through a series of events, Yi Shiwen had vaguely become the leader of everyone. This was unlike the previous plans of the blue-eyed golden toad. Even though everyone had their own plans, at this time, they were vaguely following Yi Shiwen's lead. "My name? You can just call me Elder Kong." The old man shook his head and said. It seemed that he was unwilling to mention his name, as if there was something that was difficult to say. "The entire continent here is managed by me. In the future, if you encounter anything that you don't understand, you can come to Misty Peak to find me. But remember, you are only from the third region. Remember not to cross the line to the second region. Otherwise, I won't be able to save you even if you die. If I may be so bold to ask, how are the third and second regions divided? How many regions are the entire continent divided into? Yi Shiwen asked. Everyone had a look of anticipation on their faces. They also wanted to know. There were too many things in the deification abyss that they did not understand. The entire deity transformation abyss is divided into 3 areas. The third area is where cultivators under the Tao confirming realm gather. The second area is for those who have reached the Tao confirming realm. As for the first area, it's not something you need to know. In any case, most of you may not be able to see the first area in your lifetime, Elder Kong said mercilessly, not leaving the slightest bit of face for the crowd. However, no one was angry because perhaps this was the cruel reality. They might not even be able to go to the second region where the Tao confirming powerhouses resided, let alone the legendary first region. Elder Kong continued, the first region doesn't only consist of this continent. There are many nearby spaces and plains, all of which are considered to be subsidiary regions of the first region. These are places you can get close to. This rule is also for your own good. The second region is too dangerous. Who knows how many primordial fierce beasts there are? Even Tao-confirming experts might not be able to protect themselves, let alone ants like you. Elder Kong, isn't it too frequent to call for Lilong once every 6 months? If the place is far away from the battle, wouldn't it be a waste of time to go there? At this time, Monkey finally couldn't bear it anymore and stepped forward. He also asked the question that many people were worried about. If the battle was far away, wouldn't it be a waste of time to go back and forth? Then they wouldn't need to cultivate in the future. They would only need to run back and forth. In order to avoid affecting your cultivation, your battle will not be in the real world. Instead, it will be carried out in the Void Realm. During the battle, you will enter the Void Realm with your primordial spirit and reconstruct your body inside. It will be the same as your physical body in the real world. Therefore, you don't need to worry about this problem. As long as your thoughts are there, you can enter the Void Realm at any time and place. Elder Kong looked at Monkey with admiration. He seemed to appreciate the fact that Monkey was able to grasp the crux of the problem so quickly. Being able to display 100% of one's strength in a pure spiritual world was a very powerful method. In any case, they had never seen or heard of such a method. Does that mean that as long as a wisp of primordial spirit incarnation can participate in the battle, and it won't affect the cultivation of the main body? Yi Shiwen suddenly came to a realization. This was similar to the mode that he had heard about in the Nameless Tao Institute. However, it was much more advanced than that because he could perceive the situation inside the Void Realm at any time. Elder Kong nodded. Everyone's face revealed a hint of joy. Finally, the most troublesome problem was solved. It seemed that this deity abyss had prepared everything for them. All they needed to do was to cultivate, and then continue to fight and defeat stronger opponents. If they couldn't even do this well, then they wouldn't have the face to see their elders. At the same time, let me warn you. Although it's the third district, it's not peaceful. Here, everything is determined by strength. Once you leave the 2-year rookie protection period, if you want to survive here, it will all depend on strength. We won't interfere with your internal competition, Elder Kong said. In Yi Shiwen's mind, a sentence appeared again. The strong will always be strong, and the weak will always be weak. The strong can be unscrupulous, and the weak can only live with their tails between their legs. This was probably what they meant. Alright, that's all for now. Go back to your respective dojos and rest. 2 years is very precious, so make the most of it. If you have any questions, you can ask my doppelgangers. They exist in every dojo, so if there's anything you don't know, you can ask them. After Elder Kong finished speaking, before everyone could even react, they saw him make a technique. Almost all of them were involuntarily turned into a ball of light and were thrown into different dojos. Looking at the disappearing figures, Elder Kong smiled and said, "This time, the quality of the newcomers is not bad. I hope that there will be a few good seedlings. Time waits for no man." Yi Shiwen's vision turned black, and when he reappeared, he was already at the entrance of a cave. He saw that the entire cave was surrounded by endless arrays, and as soon as he stepped inside, these countless arrays automatically operated and opened a path for him. And in the depths of the arrays, Yi Shiwen saw Elder Kong again. He suddenly understood that this wasn't the Elder Kong, but a wisp of his soul incarnation. But even so, he still gave an unfathomable feeling. Although it wasn't as good as the Elder Kong's, it was still very amazing. "The Elder Kong has already informed me about your matter. If there is anything you don't understand in the future, feel free to look for me. I can be considered as the butler of this dojo," Elder Kong said with a smile. Compared to the Elder Kong, his smile was much gentler. "Thank you, Elder Kong." Yi Shiwen cupped his hands and said, "You don't need to thank me. I'm not the Elder Kong, and I'm just a wisp of soul incarnation. It doesn't matter to me at all," Elder Kong said with a smile. "For the next 2 years, you'll have to cultivate here. As for whether you can stay or not, that's up to you. There are resources for your cultivation in the cave abode. Apart from setting up the formation, there's also a piece of divine source as your resource. Every 2 years you can reclaim a new piece." Yi Shiwen couldn't help but be secretly speechless when he heard this. They were actually using the divine source as the cultivation resources for the newcomers. The word wealthy couldn't be used to describe it. He had only obtained 36 divine source when he had excavated the divine tomb. Moreover, it would require dozens of divine source just for the dozens of people this time. Not to mention that there were thousands of people cultivating here. The consumption would simply be an astronomical figure if they were to be allocated according to this. It was a wealth that he couldn't imagine. Yi Shiwen's face revealed a happy expression. He didn't lack divine source, but who wouldn't want benefits that were delivered to him? No wonder this place dared to boast that a mere 100 years could help a person become a god. Yi Shiwen indeed had the confidence and strength to prove his Tao within 100 years. However, 100 years might be enough for others, but it was far from enough for Yi Shiwen because he didn't have that much time. Even a mere 100 years was too long for him. There is also a token for you to go to the void. Only with this token can you connect your divine sense to the void. Do you understand? Elder Kong continued. Yes. Yi Shiwen nodded, but can't I connect my divine sense to the void? Do I have to wait until there's a competition? Elder Kong said in a matter-of-fact manner, Of course not. The void is virtual, but everything is no different from the real world. You can also choose to go to the void on normal days. You can have everything you need inside the void. Yi Shiwen was secretly speechless. This was something that could only be done with great power. At the very least, he couldn't guess it at the moment. Dare I ask, Elder Kong, what should I do if I want to earn points? Yi Shiwen asked. By winning battles, you can earn a lot of points with each battle. In addition, you can complete some missions issued by the deity Transformation Abyss. When you complete them, you can also earn points. As long as you distribute them well, it is very easy to earn a lot of points in a short period of time. Elder Kong said. Yi Shiwen understood. The newcomers inside, listen up. Come out. Chapter 2156. The newcomers inside, listen up. Come out. Suddenly, a loud voice came from outside. Yi Shiwen hurriedly rushed out of the cave residence. At this time, not only Yi Shiwen, But many of the newcomers who came with Yi Shiwen had also appeared, looking at the sky. In the sky, a tall figure was flying in the sky. It was a young man with an evil smile on his face. He looked arrogant, looking at the many newcomers with a bit of disdain on his face, as if he saw his appearance in the past. However, there was not the slightest sympathy on his face. On the contrary, there was a bit of ridicule on his face. "Who are you?" someone asked loudly. "Yao Xingyan. Remember this name. You should have entered your own dojo. The next thing is very simple. Hand over your divine source," said the young man with an evil smile. "Hand over divine source? Why?" Everyone suddenly burst into an uproar. This young man actually wanted them to hand over the divine source. It was as if he wanted their lives. Not everyone was as rich as Yi Shiwen, who had dozens of divine source. If one of them had a piece of divine source, then it would be considered a great fortune. Asking them to hand over divine source at this time was like asking for their lives. Moreover, although they could receive another divine source in 2 years, they might not be able to stay in the deification abyss after 2 years. The elimination rate was as high as 90%, which was enough to make everyone fearful. They were already lacking in confidence. Furthermore, if even their god source was snatched away, even in such a unique environment, it would be difficult to guarantee that they would be able to make it to the top 1,000. One must know that these were not ordinary people. Each of them was a genius among the peerless geniuses who had gone through layers of selection. Because you won't be able to use it anyway. It's enough if there are 3 to 5 of you left. Why waste resources? Said Yao Xingyan with a smile. He directly opened a big cannon, completely ignoring everyone. Everyone was suddenly infuriated by his words. Although the final result was likely to be as he said, looking down on others like this was simply poking a hornet's nest. "I think you should not be too arrogant." An expert whose entire body was covered in green scales finally couldn't take it anymore. With a loud shout, he charged forward. However, before his attack could be fully unleashed, it was broken by Yao Xingyan's finger. "What kind of trash is this? How dare you be so arrogant in front of me?" Yao Xingyan sneered and slapped him. The newcomer expert was directly hit. His entire body was like a meteor that crashed into the ground, causing the entire ground to shake. Everyone couldn't help but gasp. This new master was at least at the 7th heaven of Paong realm, but he was defeated so easily that he couldn't even fight back. The bottom line of this fellow's strength was simply unfathomable. First there was Huyen Aonu. Now there was Yao Xingyan. He was so strong that he was abnormally tyrannical. Everyone was in despair. If their opponents were all so abnormally strong, then how would they be able to kill their way to the top 1,000? How powerful would the top 100 or even the top 10 be? Isn't that Yao Xingyan? Is he bullying the newcomers again? One look and you can tell. TSK, these newcomers are going to be in big trouble. It is said that his cultivation has reached the most critical stage. As long as he has a little opportunity, he can step into the 9th heaven of Paong realm in one fell swoop. At that time, his status will be turned upside down. Well, yes, I heard that he is now snatching divine source everywhere. He's really lawless. So what if he's lawless? Who asked him to have such a good brother? He is a powerful existence in the top 10. As the saying goes, even if it is not for the monk's sake, it is for the Buddha's sake. Who dares to provoke Yao Xingqing? We can only blame these newcomers for not being strong enough. Didn't they say that this batch is relatively tyrannical? It should be said that the quality of these few batches is not bad. It seems that it is just a rumor. They are not Yao Xingyan's opponent at all. There was a lot of discussion around them. These old people who lived here did not have the slightest fear and directly said it out loud. When it fell into the ears of many newcomers, their faces turned extremely ugly. At this time, everyone understood that in the deification abyss, it was really difficult to survive. It was not a world where they could dominate in the past at all. Although the previous proposal of the blue-eyed golden toad was somewhat selfish, it was not necessarily without reason. If this world was too dangerous, they could only huddle together for warmth. This might be better. You'd better be obedient. What I hate the most is people wasting my time. Otherwise, don't even think about coming out in the future. You won't be able to survive the 2 years of the newcomer period. Yao Xingyan said with a sneer, unless you don't plan to come out? So what if you are strong? Aren't you afraid of incurring public anger by doing this? Someone shouted unwillingly. Yao Xingyan sneered disdainfully. Incurring public anger? It's just a group of ants. Do you think I care? Ants? What an ant! Since you're so capable, then eat this old sun's stick first. Suddenly, a golden light soared into the sky, and an iron stick expanded in the void against the wind. It grew bigger and bigger, directly smashing down on Yao Xingyan. It was Monkey who made a move. As soon as he made a move, he had the strength to move mountains and rivers. Although he looked a little thin, his strength was top-notch. Clang! Monkey's iron stick was directly caught by Yao Xingyan in the air. The collision between the two sides directly made a loud sound of gold and iron colliding, bursting out countless sparks. Thump, thump, thump. The monkey took a few steps back. His expression turned serious, and he was no longer as relaxed as before. If one looked closely, they could see that his arm was actually trembling slightly. His palm had split open, and fresh blood flowed down the metal rod. His eyes were a bit blood-red, and his bestial nature climbed to his brain as he constantly growled in a low voice. As for Yao Xingyan, with just a slight shake, the numbness in his body disappeared. You're not bad. Quite interesting. You're much stronger than that trash from before, but not bad. Are you interested in being my servant? Yao Xingyan said with a chuckle, his eyes filled with a sinister charm. The rookies were completely shocked. Although they couldn't say that they knew Monkey's strength very well, they understood it very well. It was not something the average person could deal with. In this exchange, he had suffered a loss. Monkey, who was wielding a weapon, had been sent flying, and even his palm had shattered. Although it was only a flesh wound and not a big deal, it was enough to completely shock them. Hee, this Yao Xingyan is bullying again. Hee, this Yao Xingyan is bullying people again. He's bullying a newcomer who doesn't even know his root. His original form is a Herculean King Kong beast. He was born with the power of dragons and elephants, and his body is like a diamond cast. He doesn't need any celestial artifacts at all, because his race has cultivated their bodies into celestial artifacts, making them incomparably tyrannical. This is a body cultivation method that is said to be comparable to Emperor Qin's famous lost art, the secret art of 99. Who didn't have rookies? They had experienced the same rookie period, so they naturally hoped to see their juniors do the same. The suffering they had suffered back then was not in vain. Hee, you have great strength. I never expected that there would be someone in this world with greater strength than me, old son, Monkey said with a chuckle. He was naturally referring to those in the same realm. In terms of physical strength, his clan was not inferior at all, and they were renowned throughout the universe. However, when it came to a complete competition of physical strength, they were at a disadvantage. Of course, he was also clear that the root of the reason was that his cultivation was far inferior to Yao Xingyan's. To ordinary people, his skills were already unimaginably deep. He was only one step away from stepping into the 9th level of the Paong realm and reaching the peak of the mythical realm. It was also because of this that he understood how terrifying Yao Xingyan was. There was actually someone who could have such profound skills. One's skills were like water, and one's realm was like the water jar. If the water jar was not big enough, no matter how much water you filled it with, it would only overflow. What he was really interested in was Yao Xingyan's understanding of martial arts. He was afraid that Yao Xingyan had already reached the peak and reached an unimaginably powerful level. 3 Eyes, you're from the 3-eyed heavenly monkey clan. TSK, there aren't many monkeys from this clan. It's rare to see one walking outside. I'm getting more and more interested. I wouldn't be interested in ordinary people, but you're different. If you're willing to join me, I'll definitely treat you well. It won't be long before you even have a chance to prove your way. Yao Xingyan said calmly, but there was a hint of greed in his eyes. The way everyone looked at Monkey changed. They hadn't expected him to be from the 3-eyed heavenly monkey clan. This clan was also a clan with innate magical powers. They were born with 3 eyes, and their 3rd eye could see yin and yang, as well as communicate with the heavens and the earth. Throughout the generations, they had produced many experts. They were known as the experts of every generation, and their inheritance had never been severed. However, monkeys from this clan rarely appeared. In fact, there might not even be one in tens of thousands of years. Therefore, although some people had suspected it before, more people quickly eliminated this possibility. They hadn't expected it to be true. Submit to you? You? Monkey laughed coldly. His hands were no longer trembling. He had suppressed the aftermath of Peng Zuhong's attack just now. The person who can subdue me hasn't been born yet. That's because you haven't met me yet. Yao Xingyan seemed very confident. Monkey didn't attack rashly. The attack just now had already made him suffer. Everyone knew the principle of learning from one's mistakes. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.